would just think that.
We'll start the meeting in
Remember you told us
1
it was
minute.
a work-live. He built that thing. I think he built that thing. Oh, exactly. Yes, he was one of those.
How many minutes are you giving?
You're probably right. These are from a drill.
Okay.
Don't really.
Okay.
How are you, Tim?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Yeah.
Get you smacking it.
Right where I want to be right now.
Better you than me. So.
I did graduate.
Congrats. Did
Thank
you
you.
have a nice party?
Sorry?
Did you have a nice party?
Yeah. Yeah. It was nice.
Make big connect.
Add another row of chairs. And
Getting there. Bringing it in. Mostly for family, but, you know.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. The other one did not end up getting filled.
Yeah,
But this room.
The training room is almost
Oh,
full. However,
well, look who's here.
13 of us.
Gretchen Cars.
however, the other one is,
All right.
the other room's not. Why is that?
Good evening. Good evening and welcome to the Planning Commission of Traverse City regular meeting of Tuesday, June 6, 2023. This meeting is called to order. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Hassing,
Here.
Commissioner Hershey,
Here.
Commissioner Shaw,
Here.
Commissioner Colbert,
Here.
Commissioner Arnold,
Here?
Commissioner Knapp,
Here.
Commissioner Deturi,
Here.
Commissioner Treadwell,
Here.
Commissioner Tuller.
Here.
All commissioners are present except for Commissioner Topher Martin.
Thank you. Now we'll move to any announcements.
None from the department.
None from the department. Just have one announcement regarding this handout that's around in the chambers tonight is not from the city. It's from an attendee, and so the validity of it is take it as you will, but it is not distributed by the city or part of our materials. I'll move now to approval of minutes from.
Mr. Hassing, do you
I'm
want to
sorry?
make one more announcement to people who are coming in now?
Oh, another, there's people outside of the chambers. If you'd like a comfortable place to sit, there's an overflow room in the training room. If
This
don't.
speaker.
we don't
It's
have,
being broadcast in the training room.
there's a training room right around the corner with,
Right around the corner.
with a large screen and audio in that location. We'll keep you, everyone attending tonight will be notified of times to speak and invited to the room to queue up to speak when the time is right for that. And meanwhile, there's you'll probably be able to see the meeting and hear it much better in that location. But you may remain outside the glass in the hallway as you wish. If be where you like.
There's also seating in the conference room next to the training room.
Yeah, there are 2 rooms set up.
Two rooms
there are 2
with.
rooms.
Oh, excellent. Down the hallway, there's 2 rooms with audio and visual. All right, thank you. Next, we have the first order of business is to approve minutes from the May 2nd, Planning Commission regular meeting.
I move that we accept the minutes from the May 2nd, 2023 meeting.
Support.
We have a motion and support. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. We'll move now to item A of old business. This is a public hearing for the consideration of a special land use permit application received by Addiction Treatment Services to operate a residential care and treatment facility at the existing structure located at 441 East State Street, and a possible recommendation to the City Commission. For introduction, Mr. Winter.
Yeah, thank you. So this special land use permit application was submitted by Addiction Treatment Services, who owns the building and is currently using it as a rooming house for clients of their services. They do not provide any services on site to them at this time. This location has historically, for over 20 years, been used for this purpose under different entities, and again, never prior had the site been used for the treatment at that location. So what they're asking for is to be able to provide that in-care treatment for their clients at the property as opposed to having to transport them to different sites within their system. They're anticipating about 10 women as a max that would be staying there, pregnant women and women with their children. The typical stay would be 30 to 60 days. It'd be staffed 24 hours a day with 3 to 4 employees during the daytime period and 2 overnight. Now, the care that they would be providing, as we understand it from the applicant, would not be medical care, but rather therapy and counseling and things like that associated with helping people overcome substance abuse disorder. We have the staff report in your packet. Anything that was changed from when it was submitted to you for the May 2nd meeting has been highlighted in red. Primarily, there was discussion at that meeting about whether or not their staff could have some meetings, some office administrative type meetings from time to time, and there did not seem to be. It's just these speakers don't project the sound, only over the television.
You want me to go try this?
All right. I gave that up. That was the old life.
Come on.
So anyhow, sorry, I forgot where I was. But there didn't seem to be any opposition to the use of some administrative meetings there, since they do have a primary facility for that purpose on Garfield Avenue. And as mentioned there, they did get a favorable review from the fire marshal, which was one of the standards. So with that, I'll hand it back over to you for the public hearing. There are 3 possible motions there, one to approve with conditions, and one to recommend denial.
Thank you, Mr. Winter. Commissioners, we discussed this previously, and some of the notes from our previous discussion are included. Any other further comments or questions? And the applicant is present? Yep, excellent. Do we need, we already heard from the applicant at the previous moment. Okay, so I think we'll move now to public hearing. If anybody would like to speak on this topic, they're welcome to. Please approach the microphone and state your name, the address, where you live, whether you're a Traverse City resident, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Denny Scrodato, 422 East State Street. I live on the same block, and I'm speaking as a woman in long-term recovery, a certified peer recovery coach, and a former ATS board member, as well as a neighbor. I went to their recent open house and spoke with Mrs. Lipinski for quite some time. She answered all of my questions, and I am 100% in support of them operating their treatment center at this location. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scrodato. Anyone else? Seeing no one else, I'll close public comment. Would the applicant like to speak this evening on this topic? If you would, please come to the microphone.
Hi, I'm Susan Connor Herrera. We're here representing Paula Lipinski, who couldn't be here today due to a family member, her father, passing away. So I am the Chief Clinical Officer at Addiction Treatment Services. I've been there for 7 years, and we did just want to state that we did open that open house to neighbors on June 1st. It went very well. It was an honor to be able to show the neighborhood and the community what that house is and can represent, and what the potential is there to bring women and children in to be able to do treatment there. And we had an overall really positive experience being able to talk with neighbors and answer any questions. So,
thank you, Ms. Carrera. I'll bring it back to commissioners for discussion and/or a possible motion.
Well, this is a section that I'd say serves as a nice interface between a residential area and a commercial district. It is zoned R3, and it does have other multifamily housing that exists on that same block. So I see this as a good opportunity to continue in that tradition with this specific use.
Thank you, Commissioner Treadwell. I also am in support of this. The House has a history of use in this regard, and to continue that use and in this location, and the outreach to the neighbors is great to hear that happened, and I would expect that would continue to be available to neighbors to be able to connect with this residence and treatment center.
Thank you for the work you're doing, I'd just like to say. I'm ready to make the
Chief.
motion.
Oh.
Go for it. Wanted to say something.
You said it, so you go.
Oh,
I was also gonna move, so.
I move that the findings in the staff report 23-SLUP-01 be adopted, and that the special land use permit application submitted by Addiction Treatment Services to provide a residential care and treatment facility at the existing structure located 441 East State Street be recommended for approval to the City Commission.
Second.
Support.
I'll take
Great.
it, second.
All right, we've got a motion and support.
I just have a question.
Yes.
Does this allow them to have meetings on site? This motion does? Okay.
Yes, the meetings were a question in our previous meeting, and they're included in the packet as being approved by us for what was explained, the type of meeting and size of meeting that it would be. And that we understood yeah. So that was just, all right. All right, well, we have a motion and support. If you're ready to vote, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you for coming. We'll move now to item B, old business. This is a public hearing in consideration of an amendment to the Traverse City Code of Ordinances to allow additional dwelling types and modified dimensional standards in the R1A, R1B, and R2 residential zoning districts, and for a possible recommendation to the City Commission. This zoning, this public hearing is regarding our study from the Planning Commission over the last few years to allow for housing variety, as we have looked at, professional recommendations nationally, statewide, regionally, recognizing the housing problem that we have in really everywhere. We in Traverse City are looking for ways to do our parts. And so with that, we recognize that our single-family zoning is a little, it's beyond, it's a large percentage of our residential land, over 80%. And that is an opportunity for, to create incremental housing within our neighborhoods. And so we're looking at zoning restrictions and the possibilities to relieve some of the restrictions so that more housing opportunities can happen within the traditional fabric of our neighborhoods. We realize that we're not going to solve the housing problem with these amendments, but we do see them as a benefit. As we have studied them and brought them forth as proposals, these ideas have come to us with and brought the idea that we, as a city, can benefit from having more people here for the economic economic opportunities. We need more foot traffic in our downtown areas. We need more people living and working close to where they live close to where they work and play here in downtown, and to shop at our local stores and work at our local venues. We would hope to mitigate commuting as much as possible. The more people that can live within walkable communities have a smaller carbon footprint, and so it helps in our aim to mitigate climate change. We also look at fairness. It's becoming increasingly difficult for people from different socioeconomic backgrounds to find a place to live in Traverse City, and that's just not fair. If we had more housing variety, there would be more opportunities for people to find places to live and enjoy the benefits that we all enjoy here in Traverse City, in our walkable, our neighborhoods close to all of the amenities in Traverse City. As well, we think about property rights, and right now, if someone has been in their house for 30 years and they live alone, they cannot change it to a duplex. They cannot downsize very easily. After 30 years of living in one house, you could expect that if you move at all, your taxes will jump dramatically, even if you do downsize. And so with these zoning amendments, we hope to allow people to think about and to allow them to be creative with how they could downsize within on their own properties. By creating opportunities of more dwellings on their properties, an additional dwelling unit could bring in another source of income. You could have a caretaker or a family member, extended family member. You could have an elder family member live with you in a separate dwelling on the same property, which would be a benefit to the owner and the family or the renter and the community at large. Having more people there is good for the community. And so, you know, we're looking at a whole host of these zoning, you know, minor zoning changes. Some are less minor than others, and we're going to discuss them tonight. We will move. We're going to open up the public hearing, and that will be an opportunity for us to listen to anyone that wants to speak tonight. This is part of, it's one component of the decision-making process that the Planning Commission undergoes. That is along with planning documents, existing policies and legislation, research, established needs, best practices, and the professional staff and organizations' recommendations. The Planning Commission's role is to do the heavy lifting in the formation of the ordinance amendment and to make recommendations to the City Commission, who has the ability to approve or deny these recommendations. Everyone here on the Planning Commission lives in a Traverse City neighborhood. So we all have a vested interest in doing right by for and by Traverse City in what we do here tonight. Could I see a show of hands of people who would like to speak tonight?
Doesn't include
There are
the
quite a
other
number in
room.
the
That's
other
a good
room,
number
so,
of people
yeah.
here. We're going to hold everyone to please 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
3 minutes, and anyone in the overflow rooms, you're also welcome to speak when the public comments, when we open public comment. And so when we do, we'll hope that everyone queues up behind the podium with people behind the person that is finishing speaking so that there's not a lag between people. So we'll open public comment. For anyone speaking tonight, please state your name and your address. You'll have 3 minutes time allotment. When your time is elapsed, the timer will beep and we'll ask that you immediately cease your comments. We also ask that all language be respectful to all parties. In order to provide an atmosphere where all individuals are comfortable sharing their perspective with no intimidation whatsoever, we ask there to be no reaction, no applause, no booing from anyone at the meeting for any comments made. Additionally, we ask that if you're interested in speaking, yes, please line up behind the podium. So now we will begin with you, sir.
Hello. Thank you, David and commissioners. My name is Tom Mayer. I live in the central neighborhood. I live on 5th Street, and I think it's real important that people who live in Traverse City say that, and you could probably volunteer to also say, I live in the home, it's my primary residence, and so forth. And in my house, we don't have any rentals, and we didn't do anything to our garage. One thing I want to say about a lot of the empty homes in my neighborhood, especially seasonally, but sometimes every day pretty much the homes are empty, that it leaves us vulnerable to break-ins. And I reported a break-in on a house adjacent to mine, a break-in attempt. They didn't get inside, but I was watching them at 116 Maple. That was a few years ago, but the house is still vacant 99% of the time. It's new construction, and you might want to knock on their door and see what's going on there. I hope the city will not fund any building housing projects that could be changed ownership and changed style within 2 years, like what happened on Garfield at Trailside 45. Those were apartments. They were sold as being affordable, and then it was switched to condo a little over 2 years. That's not acceptable. I hope you've written something to prevent that from ever happening again. I live in a historic neighborhood, and I hope that you can appreciate that, because we like things that are old. We're not trying to get rid of old things. My house was built in 1903. We have a beautiful school between 7th and 8th Street that was built at that same time, actually probably around 1920. And I'd like to see that preserved when you're thinking about building homes for people who aren't even Traverse City residents. Consider rent control. There's a voucher system in town. It's easy for somebody who doesn't have housing to get a voucher, but it's very hard for them to get a place to live. So a voucher could pay for rents between $650 and maybe $800. So if you're going to encourage people to build new apartments as rentals, you must make some of those available to people who hold vouchers. There's a system for that. And one comment I heard repeated tonight, I won't say who said it, but I heard it already tonight, and I heard it at the Slabtown meeting, is some kind of preference about whether people should be living in their home if there's only one person in the home. I don't even think that's a discussion. If one person wants to live in the home that they own, that's their right, and you don't really have a right to be negative on that. We have 2 programs in town. I'm a former county commissioner. I know about these programs. We have a program, Commission on Aging, to help people stay in their homes. And we have...
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Your time has elapsed.
Yeah, thank you. But people do like to stay in their homes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening. My name is Michael Kelly. I live at 538 Washington Street. And just a couple of examples of where this non-occupied, owner-occupied homes, rental things is going to take you. One is actually happening at the end of State Street and Railroad Street. 4-unit home, renting right now for weekends, weeks, months if you want to. They'll rent any way you want to rent, anywhere from $400 a night to $1,600 a night during the winter or during the summer. And that's one example of our renters. And if they should happen to move out after trash pickup, it looks like a dump heap until the next week when the trash picks up. And that's happening right now. That's a non-owner occupied rental. And I didn't think we allowed short-term rentals, but that's happening. Second is, if you allow non-owner occupied, I'll tell you, any mother's child who has the financial wherewithal and the big conglomerates, every time a house comes up for sale in Traverse City, there's going to be a battle to buy that house because they're going to buy it, split it, and rent it. Everybody's going to try to do it. Everybody. And what we're going to be is not Traverse City the Beautiful. We're going to end up being Traverse City, the rental kingdom of Michigan. And I was under, that's enough of that. We live in the Boardman neighborhood. It's a beautiful neighborhood. And I've talked to several of the people who have lived there. We've been there 30 years. Some of the people who have been there over 45, 50 years said that the Boardman neighborhood at that time was a dump. It was mostly rentals, and they were not good rentals. They were horrid. The neighborhood was a dump. And it has come to what it is today. And I'm sure that most of you have driven through the Boardman neighborhood, and it is a beautiful place to live. And I would sure hate to see it be turned around and turned into the rental kingdom. So that's all I have for you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
Good evening. I'm Jill Beauchamp. I live at 810 Grove Street in Traverse City. I'm here representing SALT and Housing North. There are a dozen of us here, mostly in the overflow room. And we are in support of R2 housing. We believe attainable housing is really important, particularly for the younger generations, the service industry people, for, as David said earlier, those who can live right near where they work. It's really important to our tourism, our economy, keeping our businesses going. Traverse City is Traverse City the Beautiful. I'd like to see it also have a heart. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Carrie Noga. I live at 442 Hamilton Street in Traverse City. And I am here tonight broadly and generally in support of, in favor of the slate of amendments to the zoning ordinance, particularly number 4, which is the one where you could split a lot, divide a lot where it's not splittable. Allow two residences on a lot that is not splittable. That is my circumstance. Owning a home that straddles a double lot, and we have not have pursued for a while what it would take to build an ADU, and am in support of this. Over the past couple months, as I have followed this issue, attended the open house at the public hearing, listened to people who do not share my point of view as well, I do think that you need to reinstate owner occupancy. not waive owner occupancy alteration should be required, and I think that would send a lot of goodwill to people that oppose other particulars of these proposals. I also think that whatever happens tonight, this should not be the end-all, be-all of the housing discussion, and I hope it isn't, that this should be one tool among many that we can use to address the housing issue, affordable, market rate, multifamily, single-family, et cetera. And lastly, on the short-term rentals, I also think that there does need to be some enforcement of the policy that we don't allow short-term rentals. That you can say that, but then you can just go on Airbnb and look. And again, it just strains credulity with particularly some of the opponents to say that. And so, back that up. And then perhaps it would be more palatable to folks to accept these changes and welcome in new community residents, whether they're owners or renters. Thank you and good luck.
Thank you, Ms. Noga.
Hi, my name is Erin Slomers. I live at 918 West Front Street. As a young person who has recently moved to the area, I have been through the housing fight here to try and find a place to live. It is a nightmare, and I am in full support of the proposals for the amendments. I just want to be able to find a place that I live that is near where I work, and there's so many other people who are my age who are wanting the same thing. The future of Traverse City are our young people, and we just need a place to be able to live so that we can also work in the city that we love. So I'm just hearing a proposal of that tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Clomers.
Dren Rossi, 312 West 7th Street. And I look at the rush here to zoning reform, and I believe that you commissioners and city staff are really experiencing a lot of pressure from three groups in particular. And I think that the first group are owners of ADUs who are not in conformance with current regulations, and they want changes that are going to bring them into conformity. I believe that the second group are property owners who hope to see changes, allowing them to expand the use or the size of their properties, but current regulations don't allow them to do that. And they really want to fulfill the vision that they have for those properties by instituting zoning changes. The third group is composed of a whole bunch of people, and they're a whole bunch of groups as well. And they are employers mostly who expect our neighborhood and city staff to do whatever it takes to house their employees. Now, some of these things can be fixed by our hometown team of Dave Weston and Mike Trombley, and some others can be fixed by a committee if we need updating of our current zoning regulations. But there are regulations in place. Some of these things will be fixable, and some of the things that have been done will never be able to be fixed. But the one thing that we can surely count on that will never be fixed is the loss of the benefits to our community if the owner occupancy requirement is eliminated and home ownership declines. We know that home ownership is the best thing for communities, for families, for schools, and for kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rossi.
Good evening. My name is Jackie Anderson. I live at 1725 Comanche Street in Traverse City. The first part of my comment is actually directed specifically to Sean Winter. In a recent television interview, you dismissed those of us who oppose your zoning proposal as afraid of change. And Mr. Winter, I am not afraid of change, but I am very angry. I am angry that you have attempted to ignore, deflect, or outright misrepresent the public input that you have received on this subject. The analysis of the Park Place open house feedback in tonight's meeting packet is particularly egregious. First, there was no accurate count of total attendance. You have an estimate of over 100. How many might that be?
Ms. Anderson, are
Secondly,
you addressing the commission or a specific person?
I am addressing the entire commission. You all participated. Thank you. Only 50 individuals filled out the feedback form. And of those 50, anywhere from 17 all the way up to 30 of those individuals supported each of the proposed zoning amendments. So there is a non-response problem. You don't even know what you don't know. And apparently there's little interest in finding out. So here we are with only a couple dozen positive reactions from Traverse City citizens, and the Planning Commission is prepared to enact a total ban on single-family residential zoning throughout the city, open the floodgates to for-profit developers to build duplexes, fourplexes, cluster housing, and additional ADUs, none requiring owner occupancy, all by right without so much as a notice to neighbors, and, as research has shown, these will be market price and above. Do you think we need any more expensive houses in Traverse City? Maybe not. Between the 2010 and 2020 census, our population grew by 1,004 people, and our housing supply increased by 1,054 people. Sounds pretty balanced. Here's where the shortage came in. A full 1 in 3 of those new housing units were short-term rentals, selling above market prices and doing nothing to house permanent residents. What we do need is affordable housing for young families, our nurses, our teachers, our public safety people, and for those who have no
you. Your
housing
time has
at
elapsed.
all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Please, no, sir, you'll be asked to leave if you applaud.
Jim Crothers, 218 West 11th Street. Mr. Winter's memo in the packet begins by stating, in 2022, the City Commission identified housing and homelessness as a high priority issue in their strategic planning process. A planning commissioner recently wrote in an email, the Planning Commission is looking at ways to increase housing variety, not affordability, and that was restated this evening. Currently, we have over 100 people living in tents in the Pines at the end of my street, and for over 30 years, we've been talking about affordable housing, not variety. If housing the homeless is not a priority, then why are we not doing more about that to house those folks that have zero housing in this community? The city has worked with a number of organizations over the years to create more affordable housing units like Habitat for Humanity, Homestretch, and Woda Cooper. And I thank all those that have been involved with working with those organizations to make housing available for those that are income qualified. But when it comes to our developers who preach the need for more density, all we seem to get from them are failed promises, high-end condos, and short-term rentals, which do little for our housing crisis. Blanket zoning changes to our residential neighborhoods will do little to help with the affordable units, as we have already seen with the ADUs we currently allow. At first, many tried to convert them immediately into vacation rentals, but through law enforcement and checking with our zoning, they were halted. But now most of them are expensive, high-end rentals. They're not affordable. Density advocates suggest the need to build more density where the jobs are and transit lines exist, and are using models from cities of millions of people. Where's the data? How many people are working in downtown Traverse City? How many people commute out of town to metro townships and other regional centers? How many people work remotely who can live anywhere? How many people actually ride Beta to work in downtown? Where's the data? We talk about needing data to do these kind of things. I've not seen data on that. Where's the data? Showing the need to do away with single residential zoning because we have people that want to work in downtown Traverse City. Other major considerations are not only the high cost of construction, but also the uncapping of Proposal A tax cap. When properties are split and sold, increased taxable value is added to your property, sometimes doubling, if not tripling, your annual tax bill. So, and you're also, if you're going to try to rent out any portion of your property, you're not going to get your full homestead exemption or PRE. That could be decreased by 20 to 30 to 40%. So all this is great, but it's expensive to build. Your taxes are going to double and triple. And for those of us who've owned our houses for a long time who can like to build maybe a smaller unit to live in, like was suggested this evening, we can do that right now. I can build an ADU in my backyard and move into it and rent my house out.
Thank you,
or
Mr.
move a family
Carruthers. Your
member
time
in.
has
So
elapsed.
Sweeping change like this should
Mr.
be a
Carruthers,
vote
your
of the
time has
people,
elapsed.
not a vote of an unelected body of people.
Before I start, would you be willing to give me a 15-second notice as I approach my 3 minutes?
Yep.
Thank you. My name is Alan Newton. I've lived at 611 West 9th almost 30 years. My son walked to Central Grade, graduated from Traverse City West, and I appreciate the time you have taken for both the City Commission and the Planning Commission to take a look at this problem and to work what you believe is a solution. But I'm here because I am concerned about eliminating the single-family zoning, which is a major part of the plan. The term often used now for this is upzoning. You eliminate the single-family housing to promote development. And I found out a few things because I love to do research. There's a huge assumption here. The assumption is that elimination of single-family housing to promote development, that means a change in the code will increase development, housing supply, and make housing more affordable. Is it going to be attainable housing? Who thinks that prices here are not going to go up, are not going to follow exactly what has been happening? This is a hot, people want to live here. People love it. Walla Walla, Washington. They in 2018 passed a single family zoning. They eliminated. 2023 article, Walla Walla continues to face a housing affordability, this is in the paper, crisis as soaring rents and home prices leave residents struggling to find affordable housing. The same thing happened in Chicago and New York. Not exactly we can compare in that way, but they tried the same thing. The most interesting report was from a website called Governing, who talked about the Urban Institute study on the impact of a broader way of housing reforms on housing supply and cost. They said the effects are significant but very small. There's no evidence this makes housing any cheaper. How would that change it for students? How would that change it to get the people we want to live and take care of? It's not going to happen. This is all an experiment. And if you experiment, there's no going back here for us. My request is just slow down. Take some time. There's more research to be done. This isn't something, like they said, the effects are significant but very small. There's no evidence it makes housings cheaper. If you take a look at all your, thank you, at the 6 amendments, nowhere is it mentioned the possibility of price increases. So thinks what it'd be like with further development, but just higher prices. We lose what we love in being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Newton.
A little shorter. Hi, my name is Yarrow Brown. I'm the Executive Director of Housing North. I just wanted to acknowledge all the work and thought and energy that has been put into making these zoning changes and just make a few points. We are about to get an updated housing needs assessment just came across my desk last night. Our staff will be reviewing that data for our 10-county region, and we will also have a study that will be available for Traverse City, so we can share that data with you and talk about the numbers. We do know that increasing density, especially in sought-after areas to live, and reducing the square footage will help with the housing, and we have a huge need for housing in our region, and the bulk of that is in Traverse City. So I just wanted to thank you for your work. We are a resource here in the region, and we can help with the second piece, which is to discuss the affordability and the ways to make things more affordable for everybody that lives in our community. But I do think this is the first step, and want to thank you for taking the time and consideration in making these changes.
Thank you, Ms. Brown.
Dave Durbin.
My name is Dave Durbin. I'm at 203 East 11th Street. First of all, I just want to thank you for taking up this issue, and hopefully we can move this forward. As someone who recently completed an ADU about a year ago, I have moved into that ADU and I rent out my home. And, you know, it seems like a lot of the comments have been sort of derogatory toward renters, and I can't say enough good things about the people who've rented from me. One was a couple close to retirement who had their house flooded. They are city residents. They actually lived a block from me. I didn't know them until they needed a place to stay. There was no place else from Memorial Day through the end of September, and they were able to stay at my place. The second group that stayed there was a young couple from Colorado trying to move to this area with a 3-year-old son. The kind of people that were trying to get, young families were trying to get to this place. They needed a place to search out the area, and I was grateful to have them stay. I love Traverse City too. I think anybody who wants to create more housing loves Traverse City. I love to share Traverse City with these renters, with these people. We've all been renters. So the derogatory comments are kind of shocking, really. So with this issue, I appreciate you bringing it forward. I would say I hope you take it further. And what I mean by that is, as was mentioned earlier, it is expensive to build. Your taxes are going to go up. You're going to be a landlord sharing walls with someone, maybe. To just allow this is not enough. Most people are going to roll their eyes. They can't afford to do this. No matter what you think the rents are, I can assure you they're not enough to cover those expenses probably in your lifetime. So if there's any way to create incentives for people to create more housing, this is going to take the government and private business and us as a community to create the housing that it seems like we all understand we need in this town. So the citizens who are willing to contribute, they need a leg up too, like the pilot programs that are done for developers. Is there some way to do that for the citizens who are ready to kick in? Or maybe they don't take the hit on their PRE, something like that. But anyway, keep up the good work. It's much appreciated.
Thank you, Mr. Durbin.
Hello, my name is Laurel Heiser. I will live over on 502 West 8th Street on the corner of Oak and 8th. As some of the neighbors may know, we already do have a quad or a 5-plex unit on Oak Street right there on the corner of 7th. We also have a duplex that's over on 7th, closer to 6th Street, or yeah, 7th Street. So we already have some of these available in our neighborhood. I and my husband feel very lucky to be part of a beautiful Victorian neighborhood. I came from Oregon originally, met my husband who grew up here while he was earning his PhD at the University of Oregon. I witnessed a very cautionary tale there. They have a lot of really beautiful craftsman houses, gorgeous. People started aging out of the neighborhood. College kids needed places to live. What did they do? They went ahead, divided these big, beautiful old houses up to rent out to college kids so that they could then be part of the community, be part of the environment. The college kids did not care to be part of the environment. They did not care to be part of the community. They were there to get their education and leave. This is what happens when you do temporary housing with no owners available. I, for one, would hate to see the classic Victorian structure destroyed. It is so rare to find that beauty anywhere in the communities. To see that destroyed would just break my heart. So as someone that is an owner and did buy a house here 2 years ago, and as a younger person that was happy to take on a large house with all the responsibilities, please keep that in mind before you destroy these beautiful complexes that can never be brought back. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Heitenen.
Fred Nelson, 209 6th Street in Traverse City.
Before addressing this, I just want to make a comment on the chairman's opening remarks about fairness and so forth. I think that's a degree of social engineering that does not belong in municipal government. As to the other, I have been in my house for 40-some years. There's an apartment next door, and just lately a ADU across the alley. I've never had any problem with the apartment, because if there is one, the owner knows about it long before I do. My major objection to all of these changes is owner occupation. I do not want to see the house next door sold to somebody out of Cincinnati who doesn't answer the phone and rents it to a fraternity party for the weekend. For those of you who follow the news, you saw what happened to Shush Mountain. Some of the other changes, I think, probably have merit, but owner occupancy for me is absolutely the deadline. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson.
Good evening. I'm Chuck Mueller, live in Slabtown on Monroe Street. Some of my best memories was when I lived in the city of Detroit, 6 Mile, Illinois, and I remember that community as being very diverse, and lots of families, different ethnicities, different socioeconomic backgrounds and stuff like that. And I think that that might be your intention in this community, but I've heard two words that you've used to describe your intention. One is variety, and one is fairness. I have a couple of other words to include with that. One is diversity. Affordable, I think, is really important, because I think what I'm hearing a lot of people here tonight is that they're afraid that our community is going to be for the wealthy, and the variety isn't going to be there. It's going to be a community for the wealthy. One that's sustainable, safe, of course, dynamic, and we want a sense of community. I think those are all really important values, and I wonder whether people trust that what you want to do is going to provide those kinds of things for our community. I think we're really worried that people with different intentions are going to come here, and that they're going to build a community that we may not like. And it's going to be a community for the wealthy, not for the diverse, not for the people that need housing. And I wonder whether there are some safeguards that you can provide to help us with that, number one. And I also wonder whether there's ways that you or some other people in this city can work with other leaders to help with this affordable component of it, because I really think if we want diversity, we need affordability. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mueller.
Hi, I'm Emily Bloodworth, and I live at 623 West 10th Street. I have not lived in Traverse City long enough. I love it here. I moved here a year ago with my 15-year-old daughter from a city that had failed because of poor decisions made by the city management. And when the gentleman was speaking about Walla Walla, like I'm concerned that the studies that you are depending on are from places that are not doing as well as Traverse City. I don't want to see this place turn into a lot of the other places that I have fled. I love it here. My 15-year-old daughter is going to graduate from high school in Traverse City, and I couldn't be prouder to be part of this community. Anything and everything I can do to help here at the community to prosper, and affordability is important. I think owner occupancy is the key to this. If we let investors come in and take up properties and split, it will change this irrevocably. It will change. I want to be I want to contribute any way that I can. I think that where I came from is a cautionary tale, and I beg you, as someone that hasn't been here long enough, doesn't really have a right to say much, but I beg you, please, for the sake of our children, for the sake of the future, this place is special. It
It is a magical, there are not many places left like this, I don't think, in the United States. This is a special, special place. And I appreciate all of the effort of everyone on the committee and everyone that's here tonight that cares and is contributing to the community. It's a wonderful place. And yeah, I thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Bloodworth.
My name is Brenda Quick, and I live at 542 Fifth Street. We have something to say that's going to take about 5 minutes, so I'm going to be speaking for both of us, my 3 minutes and then the balance.
My name is Barb
Actually,
Zippin.
if you just hold it to 3 minutes, you all can,
Well,
one
then I
can
will
take
speak
over the
for
next.
me, and then she can speak if necessary.
Thank you.
Okay. One of the issues that we want to address is this issue of affordable housing. We have heard people on this commission mention the fact that one of the benefits of these changes would be affordable housing. First and foremost, I'm sure that you are aware, or at least I hope you are aware, or the city attorney has made you aware of the fact that Michigan has a law that prohibits any governmental unit from dictating or prohibiting a private property owner from charging whatever amount of rent he, she, or they want. So that's the first thing. There is nothing that can be done. They have the right to charge what they want. One of the examples that people have mentioned when they've talked about affordable housing is they say they would like to have opportunities for teachers, for nurses, to be able to afford something. Doing some research, the average job or the average salary for a teacher is a bit over $52,000, with the lowest being in a range of $42,000. To make finances doable, this typically means that rents don't exceed more than 30% of a gross income. That amounts to $1,300 a month. A nurse in Traverse City averages a little more than $60,000 a year. Based on that figure, a nurse's rent should be approximately $1,500 a month. Now, if you do research and see what long-term rental properties are in Traverse City, you'll see the average is well above $2,000 a month. So based on that, if assuming for a moment that I am a landlord, first off, what am I doing that? Am I doing it for altruistic purposes, or am I doing it to make money? All right, most landlords, we all know, are there for one purpose, and that's to make money. If I want to rent to a teacher and I want that to be affordable, I found that properties in Traverse City, I can average $2,000 a month. But the teacher can only pay $1,300 a month. That means I'd be eating $700 a month, or $8,400 a year. For nurses, if you do the numbers, it comes out to $6,000 a year I would be taking. All right, so what I want you to appreciate is the fact that landlords typically are not doing this for altruistic purposes. They are doing it to make money. So while you might end up with more units, are you going to end up with more affordable housing?
Thank you, Ms.
And
Quick.
the answer
Your
is
time
most
has
likely
elapsed.
not. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Quick.
My name is Jim Modrell. I live at 601 Fifth Street. I would like to comment that in my 5 years living here in Traverse City, I lived almost 10 years on 11th Street. I have seen the growth of short-term rentals explode. It appears to me that the policies that you have established have promoted short-term rentals, not affordable housing. And it appears also to me that this subject is more complex, more complicated than you can resolve at this meeting. And I suggest that it be part of the master plan for the city, which I understand is in the process of being revised. And I suggest that the whole matter be tabled and made part of the new master plan for the city of Traverse City. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Cynthia Burzak. I live at 503 North Elmwood in Slabtown. That's what you wanted, yes? Thank you. I bought my house 23 years ago, and when you commissioners say we need to change to incremental housing, I don't think we do. When you say we have a problem, I don't think we do. I think life is a problem. I think life is change. And the mere concept that you are attempting to fix life processes is very odd. And then my next question, my question is, who are you working for? I really want to know, who are you working for? I believe that you are working for tourists and newcomers. Many of my neighbors and friends do not believe for a minute you're thinking about residents and neighborhoods and the character and the concerns first. It's money, developers, tourists, new homes, and I'm sorry about that. I wonder why we're continuing to ignore that TC property values are going way up. They just are. That's life. Salaries go up, the price of milk goes up, prices of housing goes up. There's no affordable. We left affordable behind in at least 2000. I'm considering selling my house right now. It may go for 5 times what I paid for it. That's crazy. That's what it is. You can't change it. I would ask you to please take off your blinders and reconnect with our values and our neighborhood characters. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Burzak.
Good evening. My name is Tom Berkland, and I live at 634 Woodland Drive in Traverse City. I live in a single-family neighborhood that's zoned R1A, and that was developed with a lot sizes being 100 foot by 172 foot deep. I bought my home here because the lots were a decent size and I could have some elbow room and a backyard. I'm opposed to allowing these lots to be split and a second home being built behind the first. I have noticed examples of this where this was done in Traverse City, and it looks terrible and detracts from the neighborhood. I am also against allowing ADUs in single-family neighborhoods unless it is occupied by a relative, and then it has to be policed annually so no additional overflow of cars can be parked on the street, causing issues for other neighbors. Without this stipulation will lead to investors buying up homes in the city, splitting the lots, building a duplex or an ADU or a second home, and turning them into a short-term rental. I do not want a motel situation in my neighborhood with renters partying outside and coming and going throughout the night. This is commercial usage and should not be allowed in a single-family neighborhood. I have noticed areas along Garfield where there are older homes, and this would be a better area where an apartment building could be built for people that work in the city all year long and need affordable housing. The rent could be based on their income. There are also other areas along Hastings Street across from the Coca-Cola bottling office where there are office buildings that don't appear to be rented up fully year after year. This might be a good location to repurpose this land for apartments that are affordable. There must be other areas in the west side of the city where affordable apartments could be built as well. This is a far better idea than chopping up single-family home neighborhoods that were designed and developed to have one home site on them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Berkland.
Mary Mills, 424 North Elmwood, Traverse City. I would like to read some excerpts from the master plan currently being worked on. This is from the appendix on sustainability, resiliency, and natural systems, and I quote, "The presence of many street trees and well-kept gardens and lawns contribute to Traverse City feeling like a very natural city. As new development occurs within the city, it is important to maintain this sense of naturalness." And this is on page 5. On page 7, a single mature sugar maple tree, one of the most common trees in Traverse City, provides $410 in energy savings, 10,251 gallons of avoided runoff, and $407 of emission reduction over a 40-year period. On page 11, there is a ring of wetlands around the city and surrounding townships. The loss of these wetlands would mean that as water drains into the city from the surrounding areas, it would bring more contaminants and move much more quickly, increasing the risk of flooding along the Boardman, Kids Creek, and elsewhere. Therefore, the city will need to work with Garfield Township and East Bay Township on preserving these vitally important wetlands. So I'd like to follow up with a quote from David Hassing that was in the May 18th Record Eagle. Letting people live closer to town and giving them the opportunity to drive less would cut their carbon footprint, even if some trees have to fall, end quote. And then from David again, at our Slabtown neighborhood meeting on May 24th, in response to a resident asking that the housing, isn't it a regional problem? And I quote, "It doesn't do well for our local community to think regionally," end quote. The Planning Commission has repeatedly stated that reducing carbon footprint is a reason for the proposed zoning changes. If you are so concerned, what are you doing to reduce the carbon footprint and carbon emissions from our tourism industry? Traverse City Tourism now brings 6.9 million visits a year, and Cherry Capital Airport just reported an 18% increase in seats on commercial flights. These blanket zoning changes will transform Traverse City from a natural city and will seriously impact our environment. What has been presented is a plan that will increase density, increase urban heat islands, and stress our infrastructure.
Thank you, Mrs. Mills.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ryan Hannon. 2279 South Airport Road, not Traverse City, but I spend a lot of time with residents of Traverse City who don't have a home, who live in tents or under bridges and park cars and things like that. I'm also part of a group wearing orange today that's called SALT, Spiritual Advocates Leading Together. And I just want to say thank you guys for taking up this issue of increasing the possibility for increasing housing in our community. And I know that it's not all up to the city to increase housing and to house people who are experiencing homelessness, but it's part of the solution. And thank you for taking the lead on this in the region. And thank you for the insight, I guess, to really to look at this and address all the issues that may come with increased density. I want to share about some people that I know that I helped get housing in the city through Housing Choice Voucher to help subsidize their rent, that live in one of those buildings that was a big house that's now a bunch of apartments that have lived there a long time. One guy, about 12 years now. It was a local guy that owned it. He did sell it to a lady who lives in California. She kept all the same renters there and still allowed the rent to be in the cap for the rental voucher to pay for it, and it's still working successfully. There was no trashing the place, nothing like that. And I do want to say that renters get a bad name, but landlords also get a bad name, and there's a lot of good people in Traverse City working on this issue and trying to make a living and have a nice, peaceful place to stay, live, work, and play. So thank you guys for looking at this and leading the way, and hopefully the regional other townships can do some more as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Kanan.
I too would appreciate a 15-minute warning if that.
15-second warning.
I too would appreciate a 15-minute warning if that's okay. Or 15 seconds. First off, I attended the open house and I
I'm sorry,
made it a
please,
point.
please state your name.
Paul Wilkins, 610 North Madison Street. I attended the open house and I made it a point to visit or try to visit with each one of you and make sure that I talked and you understood my position for the rush for zoning reform. I also commend the council people because it means a lot to make eye contact and look that you're receiving information from the people that have taken time out of their night to come and speak to you. Some of you, most of you are looking. There are some of you that have never looked up from your screen. And I'm sure the audience is also aware. That's disappointing. Guys, it is a rush for reform. I questioned at the time of the open house, why is the rush? What's the rush? There could be a lot of unintended consequences, or as my friend pointed out, there could be some intentional consequences. Who's pushing for this? Because I kept a little bit of data, and I see that there's 12 against the housing reform and only 4 that spoke favorably for it. So my data indicates that there's more opposition within this room than for it. And the people that spoke favorably did point out that they wanted owner occupancy as a requirement. I'm disappointed, but not surprised that there was no real data taken from the open house. I took the time to fill out the form. I'm sure some other people did. How can we have a whole time and you passed information out, Dave Weston was handing things out and collecting them, and then nothing compiled? It's easy to make decisions without data. Spoke earlier about property rights. What about the neighboring people who also have property rights? I personally don't want a 124 Oak Street quad that meets all of the architectural requirements built next to me when I moved into a single-family residence and I have property rights. And now that home is split, a quad's built or 2 houses are built, and the property rights that I had when I purchased the house, they're not adversely affected? I question that. So if you're here on appointment by your elected officials from the city council and their job is to represent the constituents that voted them in, are they really representing the constituents that are in this room and in the other room? You need to ask yourself that. Or are you representing the developers and the retailers and the people that just want to make money? Thank you for listening. Thank you for looking up at your computer.
Thank you, Mr. Wilkins.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Bill Tweetmeyer, and I reside at 300 East Bay Boulevard North, Traverse City. I would like to reference the master plan as it pertains to this issue. In particular, page 2, which identifies that, quote, rather than dictate use, the plan focuses on the level of intensity desired for and within each neighborhood. The master plan identifies 5 different types of neighborhoods with varying levels of intensity, measured by hours, access, mass, and emissions. The problem with this proposed amendment to the Code of Ordinances is that it takes a one-size-fits-all approach, and it doesn't take into consideration that there is a difference in intensity of activity among the neighborhoods. What may seem reasonable or may have a marginal effect in a TC4 or TC3 type neighborhood could have, and in all likelihood, would result in drastic changes in characters and personality and intensity in a TC2 type neighborhood. And as an example, if you take a look at your zoning map, you'll find that an R1B zoning can be found in a TC2, a TC3, and a TC4 type neighborhood. This ordinance amendment is looked through a lens that views all property as if they're the same. But I live in a TC2 conventional neighborhood. We have low intensity activities as measured by hours, access, mass, and emissions. But what is also unique about TC2 type neighborhoods, we don't have sidewalks, we don't have curbs or gutters, we don't have storm drains. We do have swales and ditches that handle our stormwater, but as our area has become more developed, homeowners have had to resort to installing sump pumps to handle the overflow of water within the neighborhood. If you're going to increase the density by allowing more dwellings per lot, thus increasing impervious surface, diminishing the ability of the natural habitat to handle the stormwater, then you need to do the right thing. You also need to invest in storm drains, curb and gutter. But that really is not a solution either, because the city lacks the massive resources to construct this, neither does it have the staff to maintain it, and finally, the terrain is not conducive to build it. In conclusion, one way to address the availability and affordability of housing with much more direct and immediate effect would be through getting a handle on the exponential growth in short-term rentals. That would be a much more beneficial to the community at large. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Quiekmeyer.
Debbie Reggiani, excuse me, Elmwood, city resident for 31 years. Affordable housing, attainable housing, housing opportunities, missing middle, density, diverse housing, and now housing variety. Call it what you will, but none of it will be a reality, and none of it will help those seeking home ownership in the 8 square miles of Traverse City. Why? According to the 2010 to 2020 census, the TC population grew by 6.8%. The total dwellings rose by 14.3%, and occupied dwellings rose by 10.5%. But the most telling statistic was the growth of vacant units, a whopping 51.5%. That trend is very telling. There's not a plan for home ownership when vacation rentals and investors monopolize the housing availability. Recently, at the Park Place, which was deemed a listening session, a realtor sitting at one of my tables made the statement that he loved the changes. After all, he already owned approximately 13 units and mentioned another realtor who owned approximately 30. So who really benefits from these multitude of ordinance changes? The Planning Commission set out on a mission with limited input from the very people who live in the neighborhoods and will be impacted the most. Sure, you call your meetings listening sessions, but instead put us at tables to talk with our neighbors and fill out surveys, which to this day, I have not seen the data representing the voices of the neighborhoods. It was stated at a recent meeting by one of the commissioners that single-family homes cause problems. By what statistic is this statement derived from? And the listening sessions at the Park Place boasted that the changes would not increase vacation rentals. There was actually a plaque on each table. So where's that guarantee? Show me the data. These ordinance changes do change the ambiance of the neighborhoods and add density, all the while there are an estimated 4,000 units currently being built or planned to break ground to be built minutes from downtown Traverse City. Reducing the carbon footprint, I think someone already addressed this, that according to the ticker, Traverse City Tourism recently statistics states that there's going to be 6.9 million visits to the TC area, vehicle transportation and projected increase in 18% in aviation seats, which is thought to be the number one cause of carbon emissions. And this will lead to the increase of carbon footprint, not traveling from housing outside the city, which was stated by Planning Commission Chair in the Record Eagle.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reggiani.
Hello, I'm Mary Meredith. I live at 617 East State Street. I've been in the Boardman neighborhood for over 35 years. I'm president of the association. I'm not speaking on the for the entire neighborhood, but most of the neighbors I have heard from are opposed to this new zoning, mostly for the no ownership occupy requirement. And also, we're experiencing, there's a beautiful stately Victorian home across the street from me, which just recently was cut up into a quadplex. And in the last month, we've experienced this. I don't know if you can see it, but they're now renting out the rooms for $700 a night. Last weekend, there were 24 people in this house. They were up at 3:30 in the morning shooting off fireworks and leaving trash all over. Obviously, the owner of the house does not live there. I think David Weston has had a talk with them, and hopefully that will change. However, their website is still up, and they're still accepting reservations. This used to be a single-family home. We're not against renters, but the owner of this house does not care what's going on there. We can't reach him. We have no idea how to reach him. So I think this is just maybe one sample of what we're fearful of and what may be coming down the pike. Either we need stronger enforcement or we need the owner occupancy put back into the requirement. Thank you.
Can you give me the address of that house?
This house is on the corner. I don't know the address, but it's on the corner of State and Railroad.
Okay.
It's on the...
It's the one someone else talked about.
Yeah.
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 Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Meredith.
Commissioners, thanks for your attention. City Attorney, Fire Chief Tuller, I'm Mike Allenson. I live at 2213 Eastern Avenue. I've been a Traverse City homeowner for over 40 years, and I have many thoughts to share with you, but because of the 3-minute limitation, I can't do that. So what I'm going to do instead is point out some of the people who have shared thoughts with you that I support. This lady here, this lady here, this fella here, this fella here. I'm not going to repeat. I want to repeat what they said, but I'm not going to do it. I never thought that I would be at City Hall seeking the protection of a single-family residential zoning area. Never. When I was in school, years ago, many years ago, law school, the highest form of land ownership was single-family residences. Now, I know things are subject to change, and change occurs, and some people say change is good. Good change is good, mediocre change is mediocre, and bad change is bad. And what you're contemplating, or this proposal, is a very bad change. And Mr. Chairman, your thoughts about heart and taking care of people and all this kind of stuff comes at the expense of single-family residents who live peacefully and quietly, like my family. Again, I have so many thoughts, but I know I'm limited. When you say variety, I say chaos. If you say sprawl, I say elbow room, privacy, and peace and quiet. When you say affordable housing, I say out-of-town investors, developers, and Wall Street hedge fund operators. And if we don't have them yet, they're coming. And let me leave you with one final thought. The less zoning restrictions there are, the more the rich are favored. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Allenson.
Merrick Roman, 517 3rd Street. I would like to thank you guys for taking the time to listen to all of us and the listening sessions that you put on. I am part of the Slabtown Neighborhood Association. I had a master plan subcommittee that was made up, and I was trying to get people to be involved, to take the surveys, and to drive growth. And what you're seeing here is people that are worried and concerned. I share their concerns with the ADUs with non-owner occupied status. That is my, if you let this, that is the one thing I am most concerned about. If you let that rule go, there is going to be a dramatic change in this town that we will not be able to recover from. I want to be able, I am alarmed by the statistics I hear that we have over 1,000 people have grown in our census. 1,000 housing units have been put forth, but we still have over a third of them are short-term rentals. That should be our focus on how do we, if that's our problem right there with having short-term rentals take over our available housing units. What we're talking right now is we're giving away the land, and giving away the vibrancy that we have. And that's so hard to put back. Just like Pandora's box, you can't put that stuff back in. We need to be focusing on how to keep the vibrancy and how to work with things that are the market forces that are going forward. So, commissioners and planning commissioners, please heed our concerns and hear us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Roman.
Good evening, Commissioners. Denny Scridato, 422 East State Street. Some thoughts. Number one, please keep the owner occupancy requirement when there are ADUs. Please. We don't like having to police our neighborhoods, and that's what usually ends up happening. Please uphold the master plan core value to preserve and protect our neighborhoods. I hope to God that that doesn't disappear with the new revision of the master plan. Single-family zoning didn't make housing expensive, and abolishing it won't make housing more affordable. At a recent neighborhood meeting, Mr. Hassing explained it's about 3 points, and it's been mentioned previously: fairness, property rights, and economic development. Fairness to who? Is it fair to me, having lived in my neighborhood for 30 years? Is it, who are we talking about trying to be fair to? Property rights. What about my property rights? Economic development. When I heard that, it was confusing because I associate economic development with commercial districts, not with residential neighborhoods, but in this case, possibly it would benefit out-of-town developers and investors. Affordability has been tossed into the conversation along with increasing variety of housing. But the more variety, having more variety will do nothing to make housing more affordable. And in closing, I just want to say, in watching these meetings the past year, I'm just struck by how dismissive this commission is to public comment. And that's just sad. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scridato.
Good evening. Kelly Rosher, 323 West 11th Street. Let me just start by saying I too am a little put off by many of you who are at your screens and fiddling instead of some of you who are very engaged in these conversations. Don't shake your head.
Some of us take notes on our laptop, so the assumption that I'm not paying attention is absolutely offensive.
Okay, well, it's offensive to us to not have the eye contact.
And then at least name me. That would be
Well,
appreciative.
you're not the only one.
I'm taking a map of where people are reporting through.
It's just...
Okay, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. It's also known that members of the City Commission and the Planning Commission own rental properties in the city of Traverse City. I am hopeful that when this comes to a vote, that you may consider recusing yourself from the discussion and the voting, even though you will be, because you could be definitely benefiting from these zoning changes. Let's make no mistake that the changes are not for the home ownership, but to line the pockets of the investors. I find it interesting that only a mere 5 years ago, February 2018, that when we were discussing accessory dwellings, the intent to allow use of accessory dwellings units is to, 1, preserve and maintain the character of a predominantly single-family residential neighborhoods while broadening housing choices. Sounds reasonable. Require owner occupancy to provide the necessary on-site supervision that enhances maintenance and the preservation of the character of the city's single-family neighborhoods. Again, sounds very reasonable. Prevent disruption in the stability of a single-family neighborhood, speculation and absentee ownership. It goes on. that the intent is to be placed in a manner to provide thoughtful considerations of landscaping, screening, and window placement to protect the privacy of neighbors. 5 years ago. That's not that long in my book. As far as your bullet points, I'm a little concerned about the runoff when we have rain, even though we haven't had any in a while. Coming down, we're going to make things more dense. We're going to have less opportunity. If we keep building and building, we take away that green space. And again, I'm not opposed to renting. I rented when I moved up here. I've been in my house for 33 years. I bought it for $76,000. It would sell for well over $400,000. Please consider owner occupancy with your changes.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Roster.
you.
Rick Buckholder, 932 Kelly Street. I'm a Traverse City resident. I'm going to try to touch on some other subjects than I'll always find people have had, but I hope you get the idea that this body and the city commission have an absolute toxic relationship with the city residents, and I hope you understand that. What I want to mention first is, if this is about housing, I remember for 18 months, Tom Dargan and his son had a project in front of the Planning Commission and the City Commission offering hundreds of apartments with a parking deck downtown for it's a few $100s each, and you jerked him around for 18 months until he lost the property, and look what we got there now. And that's on you, and it's on the City Commission. I remember when Munson was here in front of the City Commission asking to build a parking deck because they're going to build some more buildings, and they had a requirement for parking space. I stood at this podium, I said, stop the proceedings and ask them if they can put housing in partnership with the city on top of the parking deck, because they're bringing in tons and tons of new nurses, and they did nothing and let them build it. Hundreds of them. Haggerty stood here asking to build a parking deck. They were going to bring in 200 employees. They had a joint meeting in front of the City Commission and Planning Commission. I stood up here and I said, are they going to participate in housing so there's not enough apartments to go around? And they said nothing. Then Haggerty ended up bringing not 200, but 800. And the City Commission, the Planning Commission, the DDA said nothing and did nothing. But the biggest point I want to bring up is property rights. If you pass this and pass it on to the City Commission to make it law, from that moment until the City Commission is broomed, which will hopefully be this November, and the voting majority changes, you have given property rights to 6,000 homes in Traverse City. And if you don't let them, if it's reversed, the law is reversed, the ordinance is reversed, you are taking a valuable property right away from them, whether they build or not. So I'm not an attorney, but I suggest before you or the City Commission push this further, if you don't want to face a ton of lawsuits down the road, that you get a real estate attorney, a real estate specialist, and a bank specialist, and you figure out what an adverse situation would be created if you give a property right and then take it away. That is killer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buckhalter.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Michael Goodall. I own 3 properties within the Traverse City limits. Primary residence is 703 South Union Street. I have a rental home that is on 117 East 16th Street. It's actually the first place my wife and I lived when we first moved to Traverse City in 1995. And then I own a business location that's in a R1 district, 420 South Division Street. I can tell you I'm 100% in favor of all of the changes as proposed, especially the lifting of the AD or the owner occupancy requirement for the ADUs, and I can tell you why. I purchased that rental house at 117 East 16th Street 2 years ago for the sole purpose of being able to hire a new employee who was trying to move to the area, could not find any housing, any rental to live in. And I can tell you right now, I'm not a developer, and it is not a lucrative business to own a property and rent it out. It barely covers the interest on the loan and the taxes. So I did accomplish something. I have a wonderful designer now that we were able to bring on staff. I would really love the opportunity to build an ADU on that same lot so that I have an opportunity maybe to bring another young professional to the area who wants to, share what we all own here as well. So with that, I just wanted to keep it short and simple, but I love what you're doing. Please, proceed, push it forward. I realize there's a lot of emotions and a lot of different opinions here, but it's simple economics. An ADU, an apartment above a garage, isn't going to rent for as much as a full, residential home. So this is going to be opportunity for young people to move here, discover the area, give them time to look for a house to live in, and that's actually what this employee is doing, is buying time to find a place to live here permanently. So thank you very much, and keep pushing it forward.
Thank you, Mr. Goodall. If anyone from the overflow room would like to join the queue behind the podium, there's space behind the podium.
Ann Rogers, 1236 Peninsula Drive, and I have lived in my house for over 50 years, so I appreciate living where I do, and I'd like it to stay the same with a lot less traffic. Listening to all of the discussion, I certainly agree that this needs a lot more talking to neighborhoods, listening to other people, and getting other advice. There's some of the things like rent controls or live-in owners that is credible, but some of the other stories that I've heard over the years make it a very scary thing to make such drastic changes. Back in the 1940s, we could walk to grocery stores. Can't do that anymore. The traffic has gotten so that I don't even want to ride my bike. Our infrastructure is old. I don't know how much more it will accommodate. The roads are in trouble. The traffic, it's been a problem as long as I've lived here. Our water, our precious water, we've got storm sewers that still empty into the bay. Our trees, our old growth trees are being cut, and we're putting up little sticks. I don't know if you're paying attention to the Record Eagle, but the earth is really sick right now. And we should be paying attention to making this community more sustainable, more healthy, and not just for us, but for all of the creatures that live here and the trees. The pollution that would come for more density would affect the health of all of us and the earth. So please take it back to the drawing board, get lots more opinions, and let's work together on this.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers.
Good evening. Dave Petrov. I'm a part-time Traverse City resident with Ann. I've got a daughter who lives in Longmont, about 30 miles north of Denver, Colorado. And right now, she's in a desperate situation. The house she's been living in, or the apartment she's been living in, has been renting for about, I don't know, a little over $1,500 a month. But the owner, it was sold, or he's selling it for like $450,000. And so the rent is going to go up over $2,500 a month. She can't afford that. This is what's coming. Colorado is very much like Traverse City is blowing into. I mean, there's development everywhere. They've got 5 lanes of traffic going into Denver and all the way to north to south of Colorado. 5 lanes going, north and south each way all the time. It doesn't end. And So money is a big thing there, and making money is what's important. People who think that you're going to get something better by making more houses stuffed in with, high prices and stuff like that. The affordability thing and I think we always lean back down into what is the right of the property owners. The idea of making money is sacred in our country. It's a capitalist model, and it's wrong, and it's destroying us and killing us. I mean, if you want to go with capitalism or making money, in this case, we call tourism, people coming for short term and having fun. Well, let's go for the whole idea, because, think about it. We're going to have variances. We have setbacks and things like that, and every time you turn around and people got money, they get a variance for it. Put more things on a smaller lot. Well, let's go all the way here. Why not have short-term rental, overnight stays? Why don't we open up brothels here? Okay, everybody can rent for a couple hours and have a good time, and the profits will be tremendous. Is that the goal? Because we're pushing out the people who live here and want to be in a house, not an investment. And that's what you need to work on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Petrel.
Al Quick, and I live on 5th Street in Traverse City, Michigan. Just a couple of observations. I've listened to a lot of ideas and issues here. They're substantial issues. They're not giveaways. And I think that one thing that we all realize is that you, each one of you, represent the public. And this is the public. And therefore, that public has standing to ask you, to request of you, to look at every issue that they have brought up, because you represent them. And it is important that you not only look at those issues, but you get facts in mind, that you deliberate about those issues, and that you independently, away from being led by anyone, to a decision. That's your duty. You know it's your duty, and I hope that you will carry it out in a way that is rational and comes to a decision based on the facts. And if you don't have the facts, and I noticed that Jim Carruthers indicated that there are a lot of facts missing, you need to get those facts before you make that decision. You owe it to the public. You owe it to yourselves to be good stewards of the power that you have to make these decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Quick.
Bob Nichols, 426 5th Street in Traverse City. I live in a wonderful neighborhood. The people there know each other and help each other and look after each other. And it's really a special thing and wonderful thing. And it's something that really needs to be preserved. And we've heard the theme here about short-term rentals and looking at those. That's an issue. And I don't have any issue with long-term rentals at all. They're part of the community, but I think we need to maintain the owner occupancy. I think that's a big key to the whole thing, and I just urge the commission not to rush into a mass change on things and take time. There's not a rush to get this thing done in a few weeks. Take your time and get this right. You can see there's been a lot of issues raised here today, and yes, they do deserve an answer and a response. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols.
Sam Flamont, 1719 Apache Pass. Like most things, I think the answers lie in the middle here. We got a lot of people on both sides of this because it's very personal and it's very emotional. I know the owner occupancy thing is a big deal, and I don't know if that's just pertaining to like a duplex on a single-family lot or if it's only pertaining to somebody building an ADU on that lot. I started off as a renter in a non-conforming duplex in this town until I was able to make enough money to buy a home. I have a rental, and I have the owner of the renter owns a local business, upstanding citizen, a great neighbor. I currently live next to a renter in my neighborhood. Great people. Matter of fact, their house burned down. They have a place to stay. I think the biggest thing here is this change alone. I am in support of the change, but the change alone isn't enough, because a onesie, twosie type of situation isn't going to create enough housing stock in enough quick period of time that's going to decrease the housing prices. Do I agree with the fact that we need housing units? Absolutely. You will see some of the short-term rentals that people have mentioned are now back on the market because they're not profitable. There is a ton of units being built, and a lot of these units are going to turn into housing stock because they're simply not, they're not a profitable endeavor. If you look at Trailside, that's been brought up. There's a unit currently for sale in Trailside for less than they purchased it for because it's not a profitable endeavor because that market has been saturated. So now you're going to see this happen over time. So we need to look forward. So just because it's been a certain way, there's non-conforming duplexes, which means at one point in time they were conforming. We got to look to the future, and we need housing units. There's areas in the city between Carver and Baldwin that could fit another Rose Court and another Arbutus Court if these things were happening. You could fit another 54 units on that land that's not being used. There's back-to-back lots of 360-foot deep lots. So do I think this is needed? Yes. Do I think what must go with this is public outreach to let people know that they might have land that they could split, that they could sell? There are teachers, they were brought up, teachers and nurses were brought up making $52,000, $60,000 a year. Some of these very people are sitting on land that they could split off and make that in one sale of their lot. That's an unintended consequence, but it helps that person who owns that land move forward in life in a city that we all understand is tough. It's a very expensive town to live in. So if you're able to bring in your whole salary by splitting a lot and letting somebody live next to you, that's a huge deal. So we need units. We need housing units. However they come around, however they come in, whether they're duplexes, triplexes, short-term rentals, the more units we have, the more houses we will have eventually.
Good evening, Commissioners. Mark Breederland. I live at 9483 Harbor Hills in Elmwood Township, and I am the owner of 839 Hannah Avenue, Traverse City, Michigan, here for the past 35 years. It's been in long-term rental since 1992. I would like to compliment the Planning Commission on the story map you created, and specifically, I urge the Planning Commission and the City Council to adopt the duplex by right in the R1A and B zones. I also support the other changes drafted, including the removal of ADU owner occupancy requirements. My wife is employed by Northwest Michigan Works, and she hears the need for jobs and associated housing on a daily basis. The current allowing of duplexes by a special land use permit process is burdensome and functionally prohibitive. Duplexes are already in many places in the R1A and B districts due to grandfathering. Allowing the construction of duplex by right may allow some, like my wife and I, to potentially construct a duplex and move back into the city and also provide an additional long-term housing option for workers. As noted in much of the discussions, we also oppose short-term rentals in the city's neighborhoods and residential districts, but we support long-term rentals in these zones. These proposed changes are clearly supported by the old master plan, and I suspect in the current update underway. And the changes are supported in the Planning Commission's 2022 goals for expanding housing opportunities. Again, I urge the Planning Commission and the City Commission to adopt these draft changes. I look forward to hearing of the positive impact these changes will facilitate in diversifying and creating housing opportunities, both for local workers and for community residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Breederland.
Jan Cleland, 211 West 12th Street, Traverse City, Michigan, born and raised in Traverse City. I was a teacher for a long time. I bought my home 40 years ago. The realtor took me everywhere because I couldn't find one. There wasn't anything I could afford, and yet I made it something that I could afford, which we all know what that takes. I have a lot of smart notes down there, but I'm finally going to use this time to say what I think. I've come to these meetings for years, and I remember years ago we talked about affordable housing, and that's what we wanted. I haven't seen anybody give us those opportunities in the last 5 years. I see 4- and 6-story buildings all around down by the bay, downtown. Now, down on East 12th Street, there's 8 units, pretty much all pavement, and they're over $700,000 for each unit. And we're talking about giving all these different opportunities for housing. That's wonderful. We are giving opportunities, I think, to our investors. I'm sad what I see happening in Traverse City. And I think people need to say it. Nobody can afford anything, and there's a reason. I don't know if we're Traverse City anymore or if we're hypocrisy, because that's all I see. We have all those people over in the Pines. Of course they're never going to be able to afford anything, and neither will many of the other people. It's not going to happen because it hasn't happened so far. Those places near downtown, what are they, $800,000, some of the upper units? It's not going to happen unless you make it happen. And how are you going to make it happen? That's up to you. But fair, I've worked my life to live in this old house. All these years later, you want to change what I only wanted was a little backyard and a little street to walk on. And now it could be paved on the right, it could be paved on the left, the trees could come down. You don't know what's going to happen. But I know when you say it's not going to happen, no one has proven to me yet that it's not going to happen. And I came to a commission meeting once, just a couple years ago, and even one of our former commissioners said if that one bill had passed to open up the changes that people could move in and have short-term rentals, that person said he would be first in line to start investing in that. And that's what's going to happen. And I kind of am glad, I feel good, because that is how I feel. And you didn't need to hear all my smart notes.
Thank you, Jan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cleland.
Good evening, Ty Schmidt, 851 Washington Oak Park neighborhood. I've been here before at several study sessions talking about the same thing, so I wasn't going to speak, but I'm just going to be up here real brief and just say thank you. This takes courage, and it's not on you because you are us. I think it's sometimes that you are neighbors, you live here. This is not on you, this is on us. And you're in a tough spot. You're appointed, right? And you didn't run on certain values of inclusion or sustainability or economic opportunity. But I would ask you to go ahead and approve these zoning reforms to add a few more duplexes, ADUs, and smaller homes to our neighborhoods. Kick this to the city commission, who said housing was our #1 priority, and let's put them, Mitch, Linda, have them put their money where their mouth is, and to see if that's something truly that we want, right? So we get to decide ultimately. And I love the civic engagement, even though it's been an hour and a half of discussion. So again, fully support the big beast, the big elephant in the room, of course, is better regulating short-term rentals in our C districts. And if you think this is tough, just wait for that, what's coming next. So again, thank you for your courage. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt.
Because there is a lag.
If there's anyone else that would like to speak, please come to the podium. We're going to give a moment for the overflow room in case somebody wants to come.
Hi, my name is Barb Hughley at 206 West 15th Street. There's a Sanskrit word called ahimsa, and it means do no harm. So when you make your decisions, think about doing no harm. You know, we are a community. We care about each other. We are here because we love Traverse City. People who come, it's intentional. We're a peninsula. You don't just pass through. We have a resource we need to save and keep pristine. And the more cars that come, I mean, we all know this, the more cars that come, the more runoff you have, the more dirty our lakes get. Just do no harm. Think about that.
Ma'am, I apologize. I was out of the room. Could I have you give me your address one more time?
206 West 15th.
Thank you very much.
Seeing no others, we will close public comment. Thank you all for your comments. Let's now take a 5-minute recess.
Stretch those legs. Me? Yeah.
No, I thought he did a really nice job.
Okay, 206
yes,
West.
I've only seen it.
How are you doing, Lauren? Lauren, amazing. I'm like in awe. Why? Because you can remain calm and composed, and I feel like.
But yeah, most of them are pretty good, which is weird because like we're here twice a month. It's not accessible. And I think housing especially just breeds that, but it's not.
We'll restart the meeting in 1 minute.
Lauren, will they get to read that entire motion?
I honestly thought
They
it
should
was
read the motion, or you can read it and then someone can say, I made that motion,
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
on average.
Yeah.
Or sometimes like the mayor will read it.
Yeah, yeah.
I was telling my partner before I came here, I was like, it's pretty masochistic to be involved in this meeting. We're not paid. We don't benefit at all. We don't get a stipend. Like, we're doing this of our own free will.
Yeah.
Is it really?
I just saw.
And all the way down through 7 then?
There were 78 or
So,
79 on Trans Am, kind of like the Smokey and the Bandit one.
Okay.
But navy blue.
But then it
big
stops,
Firebird.
like, I just want to clarify, it stops at, am I in the right section? Yeah, it stops here, right?
Yeah, if you didn't want to move, but then if someone did.
Somebody would do this part.
And, I mean, and moderating. I mean, they want.
All right.
It's so much. No, I'm gonna move without any.
If everyone please take your seats.
People who don't have admire the strategy and work on their life. I think
We're
that's
required to come to every.
Please take your seats. We'll restart the meeting.
So we have to go through an interview process. It's not like and we have to get everybody in here. We're like, these Maya beings that like get to talk down to each other. I don't understand that. Like, it's not thankful.
Oh, yeah.
I know, it's so, there's so many on the table.
Oh, okay.
I'm the worst. Yeah.
No, that's okay.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Linda.
That's okay. Understand that.
Oh, so just the two.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah.
We're going to call this meeting back to order. Welcome, thank you. Thank you for all who spoke at the public comment portion. We are bringing it back now to commissioners. We have a lot that we have taken in, researched, digest from everything that we gathered. I'd like to, I'll open it up to general comments, but I'd also like to itemize and kind of move through these changes. Although it is a suite of amendments, I'd like to sort of, gauge anyone's objections to any particular part of these amendments so that we can, as a group, someone could formulate a motion that seems to make sense and fits well with the changes we need to propose here. I'll start with any general comments. Chief Teller.
Sure. Regarding and I've been keeping track to the one gentleman, I take lots of notes.
Beautiful notes.
But I think only I can read them. But anyway, regarding the owner occupancy rule that is in there, I'd like to have either the owner on the property, owner occupancy in there, or with the possibility of an exception as illustrated by the one gentleman who got up and spoke about he's providing housing for his employees. I think there's an ability to have an exception to that with review, if that makes sense.
Would there be some sort of, so you're in support of owner occupancy requirement for
Correct.
ADUs?
Yeah.
And that with exceptions?
Yeah, with an exception of a review process.
Would that be an administrative review or a review by us or BZA?
Yeah, it's a good question, Commissioner. I think that's up for discussion. But thank you.
Ms. Trivalek, do we have, is there an ability to, or Mr. Winter, is there an ability for a variance or an exception for a rule like that?
So a variance wouldn't be the correct thing. a variance requires some sort of a hardship to be found. So that's really sort of a misnomer when you're talking about some type of an exception. If you're talking about some type of a heightened review, you'd be talking about more like a special land use or something like that. So I'm not, I don't know if that helps, but I don't know if that's what you're getting at.
Maybe owner occupancy requirement with exceptions through a special land use permit?
I think that's the way to go with that.
It sounds like.
a way.
It sounds like exceptions on a case-by-case basis.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Which I'm not sure, can you even do that? Like the gentleman that spoke.
Leave it up to me to ask a question that might not have an answer.
I mean, that's what I'm hearing you say, and that's why I'm just
But if we
wondering.
got, for instance, we have a local business owner that's trying to establish housing for his employees.
Yes.
And he can't live there because he lives someplace else, but he
Right.
has a business in town and he wants to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a path?
He's a city
to do
resident
that?
owning property, and he wants to own additional properties. And in this case, his reason was for his employees.
Yeah, because I think the whole, my take on owner occupancy, if we remove that, then we remove a sense of accountability and accessibility to rectify issues, which were illustrated here tonight, potentially, by somebody that doesn't even live in the area, lives out of state, those kinds of things.
I am also open to keeping owner occupancy requirements in place. I hadn't thought about an exception through special land use for a type of use. I was thinking more about maybe an exception for a length of time for the household we heard that was a part of the Coast Guard that was called out of town. They don't want to sell their property. There's no reason that they should have their 2 units on their property be, one of them has to be vacant for a number of years while they serve somewhere else, and then they hope to come back to it. I would hope that we could find a way to grant an exception to someone that was stepping away for a temporary period of time, maximum 5 years or something, or I don't know what it would be. But I put that out for discussion.
So that's my question. It's a case-by-case basis, and is there any way to do that legally?
Right. Commissioner, well, sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. I hesitate to answer that on the fly.
Yeah.
You know, what we need to have are objective standards, and how would that be chosen when, so assume that it's an administrative decision, right? The zoning administrator is making that decision. A court would look at that and say, what standards was that decision based on? And they have to be objective enough that the discretion that that employee has is not too broad to make it meaningless. I'm kind of trying to use layman's terms. So that's what we would have to delve into, is what standards would we base that decision on the case-by-case basis on?
It sounds muddy at the very least, but so I would hope that we could do something like a limited time exception. It doesn't matter why you're asking, that you have the ability to step away from the property for X number of years, and then you must either return or vacate one of the dwellings. If it can't be occupied by you, it can't be occupied by anyone else. Commissioner Treadwell has had his hand up. Sorry.
Also going on the issue of owner occupancy. Under our current rules that require owner occupancy for an ADU, is there any reason that the property can't be converted to a site condominium with each household unit considered as a separate unit, and then it would be treated as a duplex? And
Mr.
owner
Winter?
occupancy no longer applies.
Well, yeah, I mean, duplexes can be site condoed under the Condominium Act, and that's, we have a number of them in the city right now where each unit
But
is
couldn't ADU?
I'm going to go ahead and look at it right now, but it could be structured so that's prohibited.
ADUs have their own restrictions. They have to be registered every year, is that correct? And so owner occupancy can be verified every year. If there was an exception for X numbers of years, that could still be tracked, and that could help alleviate some of the problems with people that have to step away from their property for a limited amount of time, is my idea, but it would not help the gentleman who wanted to create more housing for his employees. That just simply wouldn't be allowed yet. Any other discussion on owner occupancy?
So I think we have a very hot and a very muddy situation with the removing the owner occupancy requirement for ADUs and allowing ADUs with duplexes. That's the area that gets muddy. I think we have 8 other planks that we're all in agreement with, and that given the lateness of the hour, we might want to pull away from those things that are the hottest and that still need work. So we can send something to the city commission so some movement can begin on this. Unlike the people who think we're getting checks from developers and really enjoying this is really hard work, and I don't sleep nights worrying about this. And I've gone around and around on the owner occupancy. I have talked with Connor Miller at Aspire North Realty. He has done a lot of research nationally on what's going on. A lot of places try and do the owner occupancy, find that nothing gets built. And so then pull that. Again, I have lots of information from him. And so I started to wonder if there were other ways to do this. And today I thought, what if we only allowed ADUs on multiplex properties that are owner occupied and have that be a bit of a carrot? And if it's not, then you can have your duplex, you can have your triplex, you can have your quadplex, but you can't also have the ADU. And so then that's an incentive that, again, may stop some things from happening, but not as much as if we completely say the owner has to occupy the place. And I think about that same gentleman that you're talking about. He could have the ADU for another employee, the front house for the other employee, and still have his house, and that would work. But it wouldn't work for somebody who's going to, and I fear for the same thing you do. Developers aren't going to come into our neighborhoods. They won't make no. I will tell you, excuse me, give me respect as I gave to you. Enough. Who's going to come in our neighborhoods are realtors. And realtors are going to say, well, I can sell this one house, or I can buy this one house, turn it into 3, and then I've made some money. That's who you have to fear. John Sox is not coming into your neighborhood. He's not. There's no money there for him. But the realtors, and Connor and Kim Pontius, and the people who work in that area will say, people are coming. They said it to us before. People are coming, they got money in their pocket. And that's what we have to be fearful of. Can we, a bunch of volunteers, fix that? No, capitalism sucks, right? Some people have too much money. And so the things you fear are the things we fear. David and I, don't demonize David, have spent hours talking about this. And how can we protect ourselves from that? We are all in this together. We are not the enemy. So anyway, so I hear lots of things, and I've thought about a lot of things, and I worked really hard, as did some people on this board, to ban short-term rentals from our neighborhoods, and I am sickened to hear of so many places where that's not working. I spoke with Dave Weston. He thinks it's not as broad as people think it is. He had somebody report a neighbor, and it turns out the problem was he was having his car repaired, and he had to get a loaner car, and then he had to change the loaner car. And so the person thought that there were people moving in and out of the house, and it was him, you know. So sometimes we're not right. Sometimes we get nervous about things, and we're not correct. Are there things being abused? Yes. I'm very concerned about the house on State and Railroad. I had already checked on that. It's a residential place. It shouldn't be short-term rented. So, I mean, we need to, all of us, work together because sometimes people suck. Sometimes people take the regulations that we've worked so hard to make and abuse them. We have expensive software that we buy to try and mine and figure out who is doing this. But people are smart. They're sneaky. They take their house off during the day and then put it back on at night. So when we're not here monitoring that software, they'll do that. I stayed in a short-term rental that gave the wrong address. And then when I was ready to check in, said, oh, by the way, the address is this. I mean, people are sneaky. That's not government's fault. And we do all have to be diligent for that. So none of this should have anything to do with short-term rentals because we protected that. We took it out of the neighborhoods. Now, I think one of the things that's confusing, sorry for being on my soapbox, but I think one of the things that's confusing is we also controlled them in the C1, C2 neighborhoods. And I think many of you don't know what neighborhood is what. And you're thinking there are short-term rentals in residential areas when they're not. For instance, an area that makes me sick is across from F&M Park. They were townhouses, they were beautiful, and initially they were lived in by a lot of people. And that homeowners association didn't stop short-term rentals. And by the time they knew they were in trouble, there weren't enough people living in it full-time, long time, to win in an election for their homeowners association. So that has basically turned into a hotel. I was very upset about that. Turns out it's HR. It's
in a hotel district.
Hotel resort because of where it is. And it was something that even as a planning commissioner, I couldn't believe that was the case. When the stuff went up on Gillis Street that a lot of you are upset about, I was sick that it was short-term rentals. We had worked on C1, C2. I was sure it was C1, C2. Turns out it's D. And D still allows short-term rentals. So some of the things that you are citing, it's hard, even those of us who've been at this for a long time, to look at the maps and see where everything is. So anyways, short-term rentals really shouldn't be part of this discussion. We will do better, and one of the things that, as a city commissioner, I will make sure, I would like our enforcement to be stricter. Right now, you get a letter slapping your hand, then you get a $500 fine. That's nothing if you're making bundles on your short-term rental. That needs to go up. So I'm going to ask that we do that. I agree that the city commission, and it's the reason I accepted the position, was to start limiting short-term rentals in C3 and C4. If you think there's hate in the room tonight, wait till you see those owners who will come in. Sam Flamont is one of them, who will come in and call me names about how horrible we are for doing that. So, that happens as well. But I do think you're right about that. But in our neighborhoods, it shouldn't be a concern right now. So let's work to fix that for sure. I think a lot of what we have proposed here is great. I do think extending leases on ADUs to 6 months would be a good idea, and I would like to say that I'd like to allow ADUs on multiplex properties that are owner-occupied only, but not all owner-occupied, because I think we won't get any development if we do it that other way. Sorry, Jim.
I'm sorry, I missed where you landed on owner occupancy.
I'm saying that we use it as a carrot, that if you are building a multiplex, if you're building a duplex and you want an ADU, you only get that ADU if you're living in that duplex.
Or if you have a
living in
duplex
the
and you
ADU.
want to
Or in the
build an
ADU,
ADU.
on the property.
In one of the three
On
units.
the
In one of the
property.
units.
Yeah. Somewhere you've got to be.
Well, that would be basically just keeping the ADU owner occupancy in place, whether it would
No,
be
because you
for a
could have a
duplex or
property and an ADU and not live there and still.
This is only when the primary residential structure has more than one unit,
Yeah.
at least two.
It's only in
So you're saying
multiplexes.
with a single-family home and an ADU,
Wouldn't have to be owner occupied.
No
That was
owner
hard for me to
occupancy.
get to. I didn't get to that till today.
So you could rent out the house and the ADU, and the owner doesn't live there.
Right.
all right, that's one,
Because I don't
that's
think
one
that's
idea.
enough to have an investor come in and say, yo, I can make a lot of money on that. I don't know.
Commissioner Duturi?
Tim can go first.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Arnold.
Ted. Sorry, I don't know why I said Tim. That was weird.
Yeah, I think I land, I think, where everybody up here lands, which is that ADU owner occupancy requirements need to at least stay for the time being and go for further review. I think Chief Tuller's idea is really interesting, and it's something that I've kind of thought about, and we'd have to look at how would that be implemented legally. I think that Linda's idea is very interesting and something worth further review, and I think it's worth pulling that out of the things that we may pass tonight, and coming back around and looking at them as we look at maybe a broader look at how can we make ADUs and rentals in the city work better for long-term renting versus shorter-term renting. Maybe increasing the minimum time for a rental of an ADU, maybe looking at how are we renting out duplexes and multiplexes, looking at ways that we can address the rental issue, because we've heard from a lot of people that the way that we're renting in the city maybe isn't working, or could be working better for the people who want to live here. And so I think it's definitely worth getting the things that we know are good in this, and the things that we've been looking at for a long time, and the things that we heard a lot of public support for tonight and at the hearing, and at the meeting at the Park Place, and getting those forward to the City Commission so they can review it, and they can do their part and look at them. And I think it's worth pulling those things that we've found are very controversial, maybe need some more time in the oven, things that can maybe come with more ideas associated with them, pulling those off, specifically owner occupancy for ADUs, looking at that longer, giving that more time to maybe have some complementary ideas that are going to make it work better. And then the concerns about short-term rentals are super valid, and it's something that we need to be looking at in the future too. But having all of this on our plates at the same time as we try to start looking at short-term rentals just isn't going to work. So we have to get the stuff that we know is good. I think we need to get out the door as soon as we can. We're in a public hearing tonight. We've heard from the public. It's very clear that ADU owner occupancy is the biggest concern, and that some of the lot width requirements or lot size requirements, splitting lots, are things that the public feels is ready to go to the City Commission, that we feel are ready to go to the City Commission. So I think that's worth consideration as we go towards the
Commissioner
motion.
Shaw. Yes. Due to the amount of public comment, not only tonight, but all the letters that have come in, due to the amount of public comment tonight, and not just you people, but the many letters we've received, due to the complexity of these issues, the hot muddiness, and the new ideas that are coming in, and due to a long day and a late hour, I move that we table this omnibus upzoning and bring back each amendment separately.
There's a motion on the floor.
Is that a
Without-
motion? Did you make I did. I moved to table and bring back each amendment separately.
Is there support? The motion,
Can I ask for another day?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, for another day, okay.
Yeah, then we just bring back the amendments one by one.
without support, the motion fails. Commissioner Duterte.
I'm fine with everything that's written here, with moving it forward tonight. I'm also fine with going forward with Commissioner Cobert's recommendation on owner occupancy. I think that's a great solution. I couldn't come up with an okay solution, so I just was fine accepting it, because it does get so muddy if you try to offer carrots in some way and restrictions or allowing exceptions. It just could get too hairy. So I'm fine with it. And at the end of the day, these are recommendations going forward to the City Commission. We are not making the last say. This will go through the entire process again at the City Commission level.
True.
So I move that the Planning Commission initiated text amendment to the Traverse City Code of Ordinances for the following chapters and associated changes be recommended for approval for the City Commission. I will continue if you're ready for me to, if I have to do the whole thing, or if we could just,
The entire
okay.
motion needs
Okay.
to be read.
Chapter 1326, Districts, Boundaries, and Zoning, to rename the R1A, R1B district the Low Density Residential District. Rename the R2 district the Mixed Density Residential District. Chapter 1332, R1A and R1B Single Family Dwelling Districts. To A, rewrite the chapter preamble to better identify the proposed intent of the district. To B, delete the intent section for accessory dwelling units, ADUs, to make the use consistent with other listed allowed uses. Eliminate the annual cap on ADUs. Remove the owner occupancy requirement for ADUs. Allow duplex dwellings by right. Permit ADUs with a duplex. Delete the conversions of one-family dwellings to two-family dwellings from the list of uses allowed by special land use permit. Reduce the minimum lot width in the R1A district from 90 feet to 70 feet. Reduce the minimum lot area in the R1A district from 9,000 square feet to 7,000 square feet. Increase the impervious surface limit in the R1A district from 30% to 35%. Change the maximum density allowed to reflect ADUs being permitted with duplex dwellings. Reduce the portions of the R1B district that has a 45-foot minimum lot width to 35 feet to make the whole district consistent. Reduce the minimum lot area of the R1B district from 5,000 square feet to 4,000 square feet. Increase the impervious surface limit in the R1B district from 45% to 50%. Establish a 25-foot setback from Kids Creek. Allow 2 principal dwelling units on a lot that is twice the minimum area without requiring the lot to be split and with all applicable setbacks met. Chapter 1334, Two-Family Dwelling District 2. This is so hard. Rewrite the chapter preamble to better identify the proposed intent of the district. Allow triplexes and quadplexes by right. Permit ADUs with a duplex or triplex. Establish a maximum density of 4 dwelling units per lot. However, no more than 2 structures can exist for residential use. Increase the impervious surface limit from 45% to 50%. Establish a 25-foot setback from Kids Creek. Chapter 1364, Special Land Use Regulations, to change the clustered single-family dwellings from a City Commission special land use permit to an administrative special land use permit. Change the maximum density per acre allowed to reflect the proposed lot area changes and allowed densities in the R1A, R1B, and R2 districts, with all other standards remaining the same. Chapter 1368, Size and Area Requirements. 2, change the dimensional standards to reflect the proposed changes in the R1A, R1B, and R2 districts. Chapter 1378, Renewable Energy, to change the name of the R1A, R1B, and R2 districts to reflect the proposed name change, and other non-substantive text corrections as indicated in the ordinance amendment documents.
Good for you.
That was impressive.
There is a motion on the floor.
I'm going to support, so we can have further discussion, correct?
There is
Yes.
time, yes, we may have further
Okay.
discussion.
So, this is a tough one for me because of this owner-occupied. One of the reasons we started talking, well, there are many reasons, but one of the things that David has mentioned that really hit home for me was an owner who had a renter who was in the Coast Guard, had to leave for a couple of years, and that meant his renter would have to be kicked out because it required owner occupancy. What about an owner who wants to go to Florida for 4 months? Does that mean he's no longer occupying, and so therefore his renter has to be kicked out? This is my concern. This is why I was going towards doing away with owner occupancy. I have lived in many houses in my life, and I have had horrible owners next door with peeling paint, with garbage, who would do nothing. An owner does not necessarily mean a good citizen. So also, I heard tonight, then an owner is going to, for lack of a better word, police their renter. That requires that owner to be the type of person that's willing to knock on the door of the renter saying your music is too loud, or you had a party and I didn't like it. I think that's asking a lot of certain people. I would do it, but not everybody is me. So I think this business that an owner is going to protect everything is a fallacy. It could be good, but it could be awful. And so that's why I'm back and forth about the whole thing. I am okay, kind of, because I don't think we can ever imagine every single possible circumstance where we might want to have an exception. It's not just the person going to the Coast Guard. It could be anything where the owner has to leave for a certain amount of time. And if the whole point of this is to get more spaces for people to live, how crazy is it that if the owner has to leave, we have to kick the people out? It doesn't make any sense. So I'm willing to explore, Lauren, with you, of what legally could we do, but how do we imagine every possible circumstance that could happen? That's why I wasn't for owner-occupied. So, but if the commission believes we need to explore it a little more, put Lauren to the task and see if there's anything we can do, then I'm okay with that. But the whole thing here is to create what we can, more housing. We're not going to solve, it's not just Traverse City's housing crisis or our nation's housing crisis. There's a crisis in the whole world, in big cities. So we can only do what we can do. And it's, when you look at the map, if you play around with them, it's limited what we are suggesting. But it's something. So that's my point, what for better or worse.
Commissioner Winter, or Mr. Winter?
Yeah. So one thing I would add to that is that there have been some really good points brought up about the owner occupancy. So if this was to go to this, excuse me, the city commission, one of the options, you do have two city commissioners here.
Yeah.
They can bring this conversation to them and ask the city commission to kick that element back to you for further exploration. So that's a possibility.
So that's what I
as
think
well.
is going to happen, and
Yeah.
I was trying to prevent that, given everything that's going on at the city level right now. If we know that pulling that can give them something that they can put on the consent calendar practically. I mean, we have agreement on 90% of this, and give them something that they can quickly pass through, and we can get that started. I would rather do that than having, what will happen is, because I will say it, you know, well, we'll have to send it back to the planning commission for that. I don't want them sending all this whole, you know, bundle back.
No, I think they would
No.
just send that one component
So
back.
they can separate it?
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. Yeah.
That,
And any other additional components that they may want further exploration on, or they could pull components out that they don't agree with that are part of the motion. So really, it's going to be up to the planning or the city commission to decide how they want to formulate this.
So you're potentially making more work for yourself in a couple
Oh,
of
I
weeks.
know that. That's why I'm not sleeping at night.
How much time and work, Lauren, will it take to figure something out?
To figure something out of what
Of-
you're.
If there's anything we can do for exceptions, like, I mean, I'm sorry to keep
Administrative review
doing this,
process.
saying the same story, but like the guy going up for the Coast Guard, that we wouldn't have to kick out his renter because the owner is not occupying. Or people going to Florida for 4 or 5 months, we don't have to kick renters out because they're not occupying.
Sure. It'll take me some time.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you that it's going to be a really quick turnaround, and I'm going to be out of town for some time too,
Yeah.
coming up. So, you know, it will take some time to get through that type of an analysis, but I'm happy to do it if that's what this board would like and if that's what the city commission would like.
well, what we know is that owner occupancy requirements will slow down the development of dwelling units. And what we are hoping for is to allow more dwelling units to be created. We want them to happen within the traditional pattern of our neighborhood, and we want them to be harmonious with our existing neighborhood. But the question of owner occupancy, if it needs more I do support the idea of pushing this entire package to the city commission with the idea that we could explore either along with the city commission or kicking it back to the planning commission later, the idea of how to create a right fit owner occupancy requirement.
I think I'm in support of that, too.
Any other further comments? Mr. Arnold?
I want to pull us out of it for just a quick second because as I'm just reading over my notes again, Sean had reached out to Tim Lodge, city engineer, and Frank Deturi, the DPS supervisor, just because we'd been hearing a lot of concerns about how this would affect water, sewer, and streets capacities.
Yep.
And I don't think it made it into the packet because I don't think they got back in time, but I just wanted to make sure that we get out there that they had expressed that there weren't concerns about these changes placing an undue burden on the water infrastructure, on the sewer infrastructure, on the streets infrastructure. It's all within projections. It's all within the capacity of those systems. I just wanted to address those concerns because
Thank
it
you.
hadn't been brought up.
Very good.
Thank you for bringing that to
And
the
in
meeting.
some cases, they even said the growth was slower than they were
Yeah, the growth had
anticipating.
been, both noted that the growth of the region had been slower than than projections had anticipated, and so they had the excess capacity that even if this brought growth back to expected levels, it would still be well within all of their capabilities and expectations. And there are still ongoing improvements to both of those systems, or to all of those systems, to keep them in line with the growth of the region and the needs of a growing city.
Yes, we know that there's maintenance issues, there's old infrastructure, but the design of the system itself is meant for a larger capacity than it holds now, and the projected future, it will be able to hold it. So the ongoing maintenance, of course, is necessary and ongoing, but the system is there.
And as we develop various, or not we, but as development happens in various places around the city, that is an opportunity for that older or past its prime infrastructure to be replaced and updated. We're not going to say, rip up a street that's perfectly in good shape just because we want to put in a larger sewer main. But if a new apartment building is going in and going to be ripping up what becomes the front yard, then they may decide to expand the water or sewer capacity on that block.
Commissioner Colbert?
I am not going to vote yes. And because, for this reason, I would prefer, after as many hours as we've spent engaging the public, to go with the more conservative point on owner-occupied, and that is what I said, to allow, to give ADUs as a carrot if the owner is on site for anything larger than a single family on the lot, to acknowledge to people that we're hearing what they're saying, and then give the city commission the opportunity to go up to say, no, we're going to go back to what was originally proposed if they care to. So I don't know what anyone else is going to do, but that'll be my reason for voting no. I would rather have the city commission get something a little more conservative in response to what we have heard. We have also heard from lots of people in support, mostly in letters, because most of those people have families or can't come to nighttime meetings. So there's been more than was expressed here in support of this as well. So anyway, so I think it's almost great. I can't get over this little piece. So.
Yeah. So there's just one other thing I wanted to say, and again, it wasn't in the packet because we learned about this today, and it was news to me. But there is and correct me if I say this wrong, please. There is a provision in our city charter that prevents the city from telling a homeowner what they can do with their property. So for instance, if there's peeling paint on a house and it's an eyesore for you as their neighbor, they cannot do anything to enforce that without a vote of the people. That is in your city charter, which is another, did I say it right?
Sure, so that was in response to a proposed property maintenance code many, many years ago. that was put in there for single and duplexes.
Another reason why I don't know that owner occupied necessarily makes such a difference, but I feel, I mean, no offense to you.
Oh, no, no, no,
I
no.
just, I think it's gonna.
I'm playing the part of Tim here tonight.
Well, because you two are gonna, you two are gonna take this to the city commission, and I think the owner occupancy is going to be the thing.
It's the thing.
It's the thing.
Right.
And that gives Lauren time to do what she needs to do, to help us if it comes back to us, to help us understand what, if anything, we can do in any given situation. Again, I don't think you can imagine every possible situation, but maybe there's something we can do. So I'm in favor of setting the whole thing up and let it shake out the way it is.
With concerns
With concerns.
noted through our
Yeah.
liaisons. Commissioner Treadwell?
Yes, I, like Commissioner Colbert, will have to deal with this at least a couple more meetings, and it's hard to say exactly how many or how long the process will go. But I do agree that there can be, or you've already seen how there can be tricky issues with owner occupancy, and I do feel that requiring it for essentially more than 2 units on a parcel still allows it to happen in those cases where then you might be having even more people in that property, but it reduces the number of cases where you have one person living in their home, renting out an additional unit, and then there are countless different things that can come up that would require them to leave. But if somebody is caring for much more house than they themselves are occupying, then I feel that they are a little more connected to that property.
Any further comments?
Another thing that I've heard it brought up a couple times, both at the Park Place and briefly mentioned here, but haven't seen it in writing, is there can be some squishiness about short-term rentals. We say in our zoning code that it doesn't happen in these residential districts, aside from those properties that have been grandfathered in or somebody trying to sneak it under the radar. But there is some, perhaps confusion isn't the right word, but if people are renting it for a term that is long enough to not count as short-term rentals, currently our minimum lease length is such that if somebody is essentially a tourist going to horse shows by the bay, they can be paying for our minimum lease length period, but still be operating it as a tourist. And it's not just actual tourists, but if you have, say, 4 people moving in and out of a house on 3-month schedules, then you do have less investment in the community, in neighborhood fabric of each of those people or families than if we extended the minimum term to, say, 6 months. That would allow for more people, more housing for more permanent residents, and people that are trying to develop neighborhood connections and to set down roots in this community or to keep their roots in this community going, to live here without worrying if they need to find someplace else in a month or 2.
Yeah, extended leases will help with that for sure.
Yeah. My thought about that is, though, what if the every 3 months happens to be visiting nurses, and they're cycling in and out, and that's the only place that they have to live? So, I mean, again, there's an exception for everything. Not all short-term, I mean, I'm sure most of them are tourists, but there's other reasons for them, like the example of a visiting nurse. And what I want to say about short-term rentals is if you're really concerned about short-term rentals, you should be looking at Lansing. You should be talking to your representatives and what they're talking about down there, because that's what's going to affect us. So,
3 years ago, this body did discuss a zoning text amendment that would have specifically allowed hospitality rentals, I believe they were called, no, hospital rentals, for visiting nurses, but in the review process, that proposal was ultimately rejected.
Well,
Perhaps
maybe it was because there weren't that many visiting nurses then, because people could find housing, but we keep hearing from employers that that's why they have visiting nurses. They can't find housing here, so they're cycling through all these nurses. Anyway, we could talk about this all night, but should we go?
Any other comments? There's a motion on the floor and support,
And that motion is to send it up as is, correct?
as is, with concerns via our liaisons to the city commission. If you're all ready to vote, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Roll call vote, please.
We will be doing a roll call vote. Commissioner Hassing,
Aye.
Commissioner Hershey,
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw,
Nay.
Commissioner Colbert,
Nay.
Commissioner Knapp,
Aye.
Commissioner Duturi,
Aye.
Commissioner Martin,
Aye.
Commissioner Treadwell,
Aye.
Commissioner Toller.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you all for coming tonight. Please continue to stay involved with the city commission.
Oh, is there an ending public comment?
We,
the
of
end.
course we can,
Yeah.
yes, but we're not through the meeting yet.
Yeah. Oh,
We still have lots more to cover.
yeah, that part.
No, we're just that subject. I hope you
still
all
have new
can
business.
please stay involved through this process as it moves to the city commission.
My goal is to try to synthesize.
There is no new business. We're going to move now to
feel
reports
I've gotten a good
from the Board of Zoning Appeals. We did not meet. It sounds like we might have a meeting coming up, but not yet.
Potentially.
From the City Commission, any report?
We passed the budget. All 11 portions of it, 10 portions.
Yes.
And we did approve the zoning, conditional rezoning for the properties along Munson Avenue.
Great. All right.
It was the shortest meeting on record.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 40 minutes.
Wow.
Thank you for your work.
Very quick.
Richard
Mas-
likes brisk meetings.
The Master Plan Leadership Team?
Meeting this week?
Yeah, they'll be meeting this Thursday, continuing to go through draft chapters. That meeting will be at 4 o'clock here in the committee room. The next two sections or chapters they'll be looking at will be the future land use chapter, along with infrastructure and energy.
Great, thank you. The Mobility Action Plan Leadership Team?
Really no update. They're kind of in a quiet phase now. They'll be meeting again in July. Right now, they're just giving the consultants time to create the plan content from the feedback that they've received.
Okay. From the Planning Department?
Oh, we have an intern starting Thursday, another new intern, so.
Ooh.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep,
Nice.
so,
For
Where
the
from?
summer?
Yep.
Length of the summer?
Yep.
Great. All right. And then, and now we'll move to public comment. If you'd, please come to the mic. You're welcome.
Jim Crothers, 218 West 11th Street. I'm a bit shocked as your past mayor and past city commissioner that you just completely ignored 2 hours of public comment from citizens on this, and that you cherry-picked one issue that people brought up over and over was the owner occupancy. There's a lot of other issues that our public is concerned with, the duplex, triplex, quadplex issues. It's not just owner occupancy. This is a huge thing for this town, and for you just to skim over all the public comment and all the public engagement and just throw this out there. I commend Commissioner Colbert and Commissioner Shaw for voting no, and for a few others trying to speak to these concerns. But the citizens spoke very clearly this evening about their concerns for their neighborhoods in this town. And owner occupancy is just part of it. You can go to Florida for the winter and have an ADU and have a renter, as long as you're not renting your house out like most people do. You can do that. The Coast Guard's very important, but to say just for a couple people, we're going to make this change because of a couple Coast Guard people that want to leave and come back, that's a small percentage of the population. We can do ADUs by right now. We've never met the goal of building them. It's the concern of duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes going up in backyards. We saw a huge addition 10, 15 years ago to a house on 6th Street. 4-story, 4,000 square foot or 3,000 square foot addition. It destroyed the neighbors, their backyards. They have a gigantic house in their backyard. The impervious surfaces are a huge issue. The environmental issues. Yes, we have capacity at our wastewater plant, but we still have 50 and 60 and 70-year-old sewer lines and access lines from our homes and water lines that need to be fixed. The city commission approved a budget, but there's still millions of dollars of upgrades in the CIP that have to be done. And those dollars are our tax dollars. It's only going to get more expensive no matter what we do living here. And this is a game changer. But I'm just shocked that you just completely threw this out and ignored everybody here tonight. Literally. Except for a few of you that did speak favorably and 2 of you that voted no. So I'm floored. So sorry. I wish you would have taken a little bit more time and listened to the citizens who pay their taxes and who care about this community, who've raised families here and want to stay here. And yes, maybe build a duplex and maybe be able to move into a duplex and rent out their house. And yes, go to Florida for the winter, but not rent out their house, but still be able to rent out their ADU. They can do that. But I don't think our neighbors want 3 and 4 units being built in people's backyards and then start tearing down houses to do this. Someone spoke to the Victorian nature and the character of our community. That's what's special about Traverse City, our tree-lined streets, our front porches. We talk to our neighbors. We walk our dogs. We push our strollers. We invite our grandkids to come here. We're gonna destroy this place. It's happening. And we're letting developers do that. And real estate people are developers. And they're the ones gobbling up everything. And, oh, we need density. Yes, because they're making money off the density. We might make a little money, but we all know if I want to put an ADU in my house, which I'd like to do, but that's going to cost me $250,000 right now. I can't afford that. Maybe one day. And if I do, yeah, it might be a rent of $1,800, but that's what we're forced into. But we can still do it. Anyway, we'll be, I guess, having to come to City Commission in a week or 2 or whenever this is, and then hopefully the 2 commissioners, I think they will listen, and hopefully others will too. But this was an embarrassment. I'm sorry. Thank you.
I'm Alan Newton from 611 West 9th. And what I focused most on the research I did was the term it kept being affordable housing, affordable housing. Well, that seems to be out the window. No mention I didn't hear any mention of the discussion. It seems like the whole purpose of doing this was to create affordable housing. With this real estate market, with our popularity, is this going to happen? So what I'd like to see is, what are your projections for rent? What's the data that you figure will create this affordable housing? Is this something you're able to do? Can you respond?
Sir, we're not talking about affordable housing.
That would be the Traverse City Housing Commission.
So there was
They are the
nothing
public
in
housing
proposal-
authority for Traverse City.
Nothing in the proposal that had to do that used the words affordable housing?
No.
That is not the jurisdiction of this body.
Apparently. So that is not an issue about creating housing. Oh, it's just creating housing.
We're
Okay,
about
that's clear.
land use, yeah, so creating housing variety was the goal, and the
Okay,
idea.
then my mistake.
City Commission does that. And the housing.
So the city commission's purpose is to create affordable housing. Is that
It's one of their
Yes.
one
they
of their
can.
purposes.
One of their goals.
One of their goals.
But you're not presenting this to the commission that has had anything to do with affordable housing.
We can't, it's not our purview to talk about how much things cost.
I think that's a mistake, but.
Well, it's just,
It's-
it's what, we're not
It's what we're governed
This
by.
body is
governed
established
by-
by the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Gran Rossi, 312 West 7th Street, and I too am very disappointed that you didn't pay attention to these hundreds of people. I don't know how many were here. But at any rate, most of them did speak out against owner occupancy, and you have ignored that. Another thing it seems that you have ignored, and I'm disappointed at that, is I have sent a letter to all of you over email, and there's reference to it on your desks on the back of the little diagram I wrote there that talks about making an amendment for people who are in the military, people who might want to take advantage of educational opportunities or be excused for care of family members. I was saying this to a neighbor, and she said, well, why wouldn't they have thought about that themselves? Because you can use that as an excuse. Now, either you're using it for an excuse, or you didn't read your emails, or you didn't read what I put on your desk, and not one person spoke up and said, well, Mrs. Rossi addressed that, and this would be a good solution to this. We can make an amendment to fix this. But when the homeowners are lost in this city, you are going to suffer. The city will suffer, families will suffer, kids will suffer, and our schools will be emptying out. This was a huge mistake on your part. Thank you.
In regards to the owner occupied, I just, maybe you can help me understand. For me, my concern of taking that out is I'm not concerned about, I wasn't worried about the owner policing the people living there or making judgments about the music or how they behave. So help me if this can or can't happen. But if it is not owner occupied, then does that mean, let's say it's an old house, let's tear it down, will the realtors come in and put up the duplexes or the triplexes for their own business, and they can because and they don't have to live there? And my concern is how many of those will happen in our neighborhoods. Is that a possibility of something that can happen? The realtors will buy up the home. So I think, I just want you not to think that I didn't want owner occupied because I'm concerned about policing or how the rental's going to be. My concern is how it's going to change our neighborhoods with the duplexes and the triplexes. And since the owner doesn't have to be there, he or she can put many of those up in the neighborhood. Can that happen? And is that then what we want? That's what I'm
People
confused
will
about.
live
That's
there.
what I'm worried about.
Limited how many can be put up.
Like down the street on 211.
This is housing, so people would live in housing. Yeah, whether
So-
they own it or rent it, they would live there.
So there could be then those types of buildings in the backyard, which, I have a little garden.
It
and
has to be in the front yard. We have
Right.
the main building, there's
Gotcha.
rules about where a house
But
would
w-
be and where an ADU
But are
would
we
be.
opening it up, like you mentioned, the realtors, which I kind of thought were like investors because it's a business, and they're creating those businesses now because things have changed and they can have that business next door to me. Is that what's happening by getting rid of the owner-occupied part? That was my concern. Just so you know, I wasn't worried about policing or being the neighbor that's concerned about how that next door is going to be. I don't think most of us are. We live in neighborhoods with rentals, and we all have. That was not, I think, a lot of our concerns, maybe some. My concern is that it's going to change the whole character of the neighborhood and the quiet and, a lot more people. That will happen. And, there are already some of those things, you know, I can hear the bands from downtown already on 12th Street. I don't say anything, and all the noise. I like the noise from the football field, but it's constant, where it used to be just once in a while. For the football games, there's something all the time. I don't care. I love that. So don't just assume that those are our reasons, because we've lived here forever. We love our city, but I just want it to stay our city. So anyway, I think you sort of answered it, that they can do it. As many as they want. You don't have to, Mr. Hassing. I'm not looking just at you, but you were looking at me, so I thought I'd look at you.
I mean, it's very expensive to do this, so it's not something that, it's not going to be a big money-making operation for somebody to tear down a building, buy a building, tear it down, build a duplex.
Somebody said there are people out there with a lot of money. That was what was said up
But
here.
it's not a money-making operation, is the...
It isn't?
Well, no, if somebody has a lot of money and wants to get a 5% return on investment, they can get a CD at a bank for that. They're not going to get a 5% return on investment by spending $30,000 to tear down a house that they paid $500,000 on, and then
$200 a square foot to build whatever they're going to
You know, I always wondered that, because I always think there must be, you know, I know there's wealthy people in town, because I always see lovely little houses that are no longer there, that have been torn down, and there's beautiful homes there. So
Yes.
the money's there, and I know that.
well, in the interest of money.
But I
and
just
not-
wondered if that could be a possibility, that because there is a business then in our neighborhood, or
Not to get
businesses.
into debate, but there is
No,
also.
just a second, just a second.
Yeah, so.
You guys, he's trying to tell me something, I can't hear him. Go ahead.
There's also a
Didn't I sound like a teacher there?
There's also a possibility of somebody to tear down two houses and build one house on the same property if they have buckets of money.
I know that now, but I didn't until I asked those questions, so
If
thanks for
they,
answering them.
if they buy two small houses and want to build a very large house that
And
is
I'm okay
allowed.
with that. I just didn't want one person to come in and do that to many of our homes on my block or all the blocks, so, thanks.
Thank you for coming.
No, I'm not French.
Hello, I'm Barb Zupan, and I live at 205 7th Street. And I have to say that I am shocked, as well as Jim is, because you have spent, I know, a lot of time looking at this. A lot of people have participated, we've written letters, we've been engaged. We're told if we get engaged with our city government that, you know, they'll listen to us. I can't believe, after all this time, that you would blanket this, you would even recommend the whole thing goes to the city commission. I mean, I'm speechless that anything that's been said or written to you has not made a dent in your thoughts about what's going on here. We had a city commissioner come here, it was very interesting, recommending that you just send it up to the city commission. It was shocking to me that he went ahead and told you to get it off your plates, move it up to the city commission, and go on with your business. I thought that was really inappropriate. Right now, the zoning, if you look at the zoning right now and look around, drive around town, go down any alley, there's ADUs going up, there's stuff happening all over town before any of this zoning change has happened. I mean, you all know neighborhoods that stuff's going on here, that without even this open blanket zoning changes, that's going to happen to 82% of our city. There'll be no more single-family dwellings or homes. I mean, doesn't that bother you at all? There's no zoning for single-family homes, no protection. And I think a lot of us as citizens believe that your job is to protect the city, is to protect the citizens, to listen and to be tuned in to what we're thinking and what we're concerned with. Because the city is, we hope, will go on indefinitely, but it can't go on as a business. You know, it's not a neighborhood when it's a business, and it's going to turn into a business. I don't know how you can not connect the dots here when you have 4 dwellings on one piece of property, that isn't a business. So our neighborhoods are going to turn into businesses, and it may take 2 years, 3 years, but it will happen. I mean, you just don't open the doors like that and everything stays the same. Anyway, see you at the city commission meetings, I guess. very disappointed.
Thank you.
Sam Flamont, 1719 Apache Pass. Linda, I thought it was inappropriate to call me out like that.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
And honestly, again, I'll tell you, like tell Mailer Brothers on Facebook, you should sit down with me. I won't oppose your C3, C4 amendments if you were to bring those to the table for limiting short-term rentals. You don't know me like you think you do. So, but I know we need housing. It's simple as that. I live in this world. So I am a realtor, so you guys can boo me if you choose to. I have built houses. I have split lots. I have done numerous things to help bring housing to the city. I think where you're going to see most of this happen is on splittable lots. So to answer your question, we just had this discussion. Mayor Cruz was involved in it, and so was another lady. There was a $515,000 house on 11th Street, 12th Street, advertising the future possibilities of this compound. The numbers as an investment, you would lose your butt. I won't swear, but you couldn't make the numbers work unless you paid for it in all cash. And a lot of these people that invest in that type of real estate don't spend all their cash. They like to leverage, and there's no return. You'd have to get over $3,000 a month rent per unit if you had 3 units on that property, including an 850 square foot ADU. So that's not what's going to happen. What's going to happen is there's going to be split lots. There's going to be condo docks. There's going to be like on Carver Street where you have 360 foot deep lots and you got trash back there. You go back there, cars broken down, trash in the back of the lot. Is that increasing the beauty of our city? Is that increasing the value of our neighborhood? It's not. That is land that can be used for a house instead of a dump, which shouldn't be allowed to be happening anyways, but it is, because it's impossible. And I understand it's impossible to police. But we need housing units. So the split lots are going to be where you're going to see a lot of these things. You're not going to see a $900,000 house on 6th Street get torn down to build a duplex. It just simply doesn't pencil out. It will not work. It will not work. As a real estate investor, I'm telling you it won't work. And there's no way they're coming in, like you said, John Sox is not coming in to build duplexes on 6th Street. There is opportunity here if done right. I think one big part of this I would like to see get added is a community outreach to people who have land. I think it's huge because there's an opportunity for people who don't make a ton of money, blue-collar people, that could really benefit from this by saying, you know what, I don't use the back half of this lot. I don't use this side of my land, but you're telling me I can get 60 grand for it, and I only make 40 a year? Okay, great. And now I have a neighbor. Fine, I have a neighbor over here already. It won't be a big deal, except it will help people. The only way you can ever bring prices down is to increase supply. My fear is, and like Mayor Crothers' fear is, and I do agree with him on this, even though he thinks I don't like him, is if we don't get units fast enough, and that's where the outreach part comes in. If you let me or somebody else build one house, and only one house, that's going to be a market value, above market value house. Prices will not come down. But if you can outreach and increase people's knowledge of what they have, what they can do, then we can make a difference. Then we can make a real difference, and we, as a city, can make a difference. But just to note, we have done a split lot, and we've built houses below market value on Barlow Street because the numbers worked. We were able to sell a house that I could sell. I could have sold for $250,000. I sold it for $175,000 because we needed more housing. And what was one house turned into 4 units. And the lady who bought this lot from me that I split, she was going to make a rental property out of the duplex, found out the numbers to be impossible, and she now sold that duplex. So there's a very nice 3-bedroom, 2-bath duplex. Each unit is now owner-occupied. So you went from 1 abandoned house to 4 owner-occupied units on Barlow Street. This is amazing stuff that can happen if it's done properly. Now, I know not all developers and all real estate investors are going to do the things that they say they're going to do, like we mentioned on 12th Street, where it was supposed to be affordable housing, there was a variance given, and now they're selling condos or whatever for $715,000. I think that's nonsense. I don't agree with that. But yeah, that's where I'm at. We need units. I'm telling you, we need units, and we need units for the future. People are coming here. The more units we have, the more housing we'll have. and the more people can afford to live here.
Well said.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Fluant. Any other public comment? All right. Thank you all for your work. This meeting's adjourned.
He doesn't remember how mean he was to us. Oh my God, tell me about it. I don't know, he's always. I was like, are you good guy? Don't do that.
I'm surprised that meeting went as short as it did.
Yeah, it's only 11, no.
It's only barely past Richard's bedtime.
Did you tell Debbie? Yes. I didn't know.